My wife's mother's 60th birthday planner called. Your wife canceled your invitation, but asked to keep the $60K deposit you paid. I said, cancel the entire party, she gasped. But sir, you're not the celebrant. No, but I own the venue, the catering company, and the hotel chain they booked for guests. The phone rang at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. I remember the exact time because I was in the middle of reviewing third-quarter projections for the Meridian Hotel Group, and the spreadsheet cell I'd been staring at Q3 revenue for our Portland property was still blinking its cursor when I reached for my phone. Numbers have always been my language, the one dialect I speak fluently when everything else turns to noise. But that afternoon, those numbers would become meaningless. Mr. Chen? The voice was professional, clipped, with just enough warmth to suggest this was a courtesy call, not a crisis. This is Rebecca Hartwell from Prestige Events Management. I'm calling regarding the Whitmore celebration on Saturday, December 16th. I leaned back in my chair, the leather creaking softly. Through my office window, Seattle stretched out in all its gray December glory rain streaking the glass, clouds hanging low enough to touch the Space Needle. Yes, Rebecca. Is everything on schedule? There was a pause. Not long, maybe 3 seconds, but in those 3 seconds, I heard her choose her words. I've sat across negotiating tables from CEOs and venture capitalists long enough to know when someone is calculating how to deliver bad news. Mr. Chen, I'm calling because there's been a change to the guest list. I waited. This is what you do when you sense someone is about to tell you something they don't want to say. You wait, and you let the silence do the work. Your name has been removed from the invitation list, she said finally. Mrs. Chen, your wife, Melissa called this morning to make the adjustment. The words landed softly, like snow on water. For a moment, they didn't seem to mean anything at all. I looked at the photos on my desk. Melissa and me at our wedding 7 years ago. Her smile brilliant against the white of her dress. Melissa and me in Tuscany last summer, her hand shading her eyes from the sun. Melissa's mother, Caroline, at our housewarming party, her arm around my shoulders, calling me the son I never had. I see, I said. Because what else do you say when your wife uninvites you to her mother's birthday party? And the deposit? That's actually why I'm calling, sir. Rebecca's voice took on a different quality now. Apologetic, but also, I detected, slightly uncomfortable with her role as messenger. Mrs. Chen has requested that the $60,000 deposit remain applied to the event despite the change in guest count. She said, you'd understand. $60,000. I'd written that check 6 months ago, seated at our kitchen island while Melissa stood behind me, her hands on my shoulders, her breath warm against my ear. You're too generous, she'd whispered. Mom is going to cry when she sees what you've done. I'd covered her hand with mine, believing I was investing in family, in the woman who'd raised the person I loved, in the myth of belonging. Mr. Chen? Are you still there? I'm here, I said. Outside. The rain intensified, turning the world beyond my window into an impressionist painting. Rebecca, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Of course, sir. When Melissa called to remove my name from the guest list, how did she sound? Another pause. Longer this time. Sir, I'm not sure I should. Please. I heard her exhale. She sounded relieved, Mr. Chen. She laughed when I confirmed the change had been made. She said something about finally being able to enjoy her mother's party without walking on eggshells. Walking on eggshells. I turned the phrase over in my mind like a stone, examining it from every angle. Our marriage had been many things over the past 7 years. Passionate, turbulent, comfortable, strained, but I'd never thought of it as fragile. Or perhaps I had, and I'd simply been too comfortable walking carefully to notice I was the only one trying not to cause cracks. Rebecca, I said slowly, I'd like you to cancel the entire event. Silence. Complete, shocked silence. Excuse me, sir? Cancel the birthday party. All of it. The venue, the catering, the room blocks at the hotel, the entertainment, the florals, the photographer, everything. Mr. Chen, I can't do that. You're not the celebrant. Mrs. Caroline Whitmore is the client of record. And while you did provide the initial deposit, the contract, who owns the contract, Rebecca? I'm sorry? I swiveled my chair to face the rain, watching droplets race each other down the glass. Prestige Events Management. Who owns it? We're an independent company, sir. We've been in business for... You're owned by Lux Hospitality Partners, I said quietly, which is a subsidiary of Chen Holdings, which is my company, Rebecca. I own Prestige Events Management. I've owned it for 3 years, since we acquired Lux in the merger. I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line. The Meridian Hotel, Seattle, where you've booked the grand ballroom for the party. I own that too. It's the flagship property of the Meridian Hotel Group. The catering company you've contracted, Harvest and Hearth, I acquired them last year. They're part of our hospitality portfolio. The Meridian Suites, where you've blocked 50 rooms for out-of-town guests, also mine, Mr. Chen. Here's what's going to happen, Rebecca. You're going to cancel every aspect of this event. You're going to do it professionally, you're going to document everything, and you're going to send me a detailed accounting of all deposits, payments, and cancellation terms. Can you do that? Sir, this will cause significant. Mrs. Whitmore will be devastated. And Mrs. Chen, your wife. My wife, I said, tasting the words, finding them strange in my mouth, uninvited me from a party I paid for. She did it without a conversation, without a warning, without the basic courtesy of a phone call. She laughed about it, Rebecca. She laughed about being free of me. I understand you're upset, but... I'm not upset, I interrupted, and I realized it was true. I wasn't upset. I was something else entirely, something colder and more clarifying than anger. I'm simply responding to the situation with the resources available to me. She made a choice about my presence in her family. I'm making a choice about my resources in her celebration. Rebecca was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different, professional, but also tinged with something that might have been understanding, or pity, or both. I'll need to verify your authority with our legal department, sir. This is unprecedented. Of course, call David Morrison at Chen Holdings. He's the general counsel. He'll confirm everything and provide you with the necessary authorization. I want this handled by end of business today. Understood, sir. And Mr. Chen? I'm sorry for all of this. I almost thanked her, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I said, just do your job, Rebecca. That's all I'm asking. After I hung up, I sat very still. The numbers on my computer screen swam in and out of focus. Q3 revenue, Portland property, projected growth, market share, all of it meaningless language, a dialect I suddenly couldn't speak. I thought about Melissa, about the way she'd looked at me this morning over coffee, her face serene and untroubled. She'd kissed me goodbye, straightened my tie, told me she'd see me at dinner. Not a flicker of guilt, not a shadow of what she'd already set in motion. How long had she been planning this? Days? Weeks? Had she known when she woke up beside me that morning that she was going to erase me from her family's celebration? Had she kissed me with the taste of that decision already on her lips? My phone buzzed. A text from Melissa. Don't forget we're having dinner with Mom tonight. She wants to finalize some last-minute party details. Wear the blue shirt she likes. I stared at the heart emoji. That small red symbol that suddenly looked obscene. She was going to sit across a table from me tonight, smile at me, maybe hold my hand, and discuss party details for an event she'd already decided I wouldn't attend. She was going to let me nod and agree, and offer suggestions for a celebration that had been scrubbed clean of my presence. The question wasn't whether to tell her I knew. The question was how much to tell her, and when, and whether to let her see what was coming. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in months. Thomas Chen, as I live and breathe. The voice on the other end belonged to Marcus Wu, my best friend since college, and currently the best private investigator in Seattle. To what do I owe the pleasure? Marcus, I need you to look into something for me, quietly and quickly. This about business or pleasure. I watched the rain stream down my window, distorting the city into abstract shapes. Neither. It's about my marriage. Shit, Tom. What happened? I'm not sure yet, I said honestly, but I'm going to find out. How fast can you dig up someone's financial records, phone logs, and travel history? Whose? My wife's. The silence on Marcus's end was different from Rebecca's, heavier, weighted with concern. Tom, are you sure you want to do this? Sometimes ignorance really is. I was just uninvited to my mother-in-law's birthday party, I said. A party I funded. Melissa did it without telling me, laughed about it, and is planning to sit across from me at dinner tonight and pretend nothing happened. So yes, Marcus, I'm sure. I need to know what else she's hiding. Fuck. Okay, give me 48 hours. I need it faster than that. 24. Tom, please, Marcus. I'm having dinner with her family tonight. I need to know if I'm walking into an ambush or just a garden variety betrayal. He sighed. 12 hours. That's the best I can do. I'll call in every favor I have. Thank you. After I hung up, I opened my calendar and looked at tonight's entry. Dinner with Melissa and Caroline. 7 p.m. The Sterling Room. The Sterling Room was Caroline's favorite restaurant. An intimate French place with velvet booths and candlelight and a wine list that could finance a small nation. I'd been there dozens of times, always picking up the check, always doting on Caroline, always playing the role of devoted son-in-law. I'd listened to her stories about Melissa's childhood, laughed at her jokes, nodded sympathetically when she complained about her ex-husband. I'd made myself indispensable, valuable, worthy, and apparently it hadn't mattered at all. My desk phone rang. I glanced at the caller ID. David Morrison, my general counsel. David. Tom, I just got a very interesting call from Prestige Events Management. Want to tell me why we're canceling Caroline Whitmore's birthday party? Because I'm no longer invited. I said simply. Jesus. Melissa did that? This morning, apparently. What are you going to do? I looked out at the rain, at the city I'd helped build through careful investments and calculated risks, at the empire I'd constructed from nothing but ambition and the willingness to see 3 moves ahead. I'm going to find out the truth, I said. And then I'm going to respond accordingly. Tom, as your lawyer and your friend, I have to tell you, whatever you're planning, be careful. Revenge has a way of... This isn't revenge, David. This is clarity. There's a difference. I could hear him weighing his words. Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, canceling a birthday party sounds like... She uninvited me, I said again, softer this time. She took my money, erased my name, and laughed about it. What would you do? He didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was resigned. I'd probably do exactly what you're doing, but I'd hate myself for it. That's the thing, David, I said, watching rain transform my city into something unfamiliar and new. I don't hate myself. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Sometimes, the truth is the kindest gift you can give someone, even when it destroys them. After I hung up, I pulled up my email and drafted a message to Rebecca Hartwell, confirming everything we discussed and adding one additional instruction. I wanted a complete guest list for the party, along with any notes about seating arrangements, dietary restrictions, and special requests. I wanted to know exactly who Melissa had invited to celebrate her mother. I wanted to know who she'd chosen over me. And then, when Marcus delivered his report in 12 hours, I'd know why. The rain continued to fall, steady and relentless. Outside my window, Seattle transformed into a watercolor, all the sharp edges bleeding into soft uncertainty. Inside, I felt something similar happening to the life I thought I knew, all the clear boundaries dissolving, revealing shapes I didn't recognize. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Melissa. Also, Mom wants to go over the seating chart tonight. She's worried about where to put Aunt Linda. You know how dramatic Linda can be. I read it twice, looking for hidden meanings, for some acknowledgement of what she'd done. But there was nothing, just casual domesticity, the language of a marriage that, on her end at least, was continuing exactly as it always had. The seating chart. She wanted to discuss where to put Aunt Linda at a party I wouldn't attend, at a celebration she'd erased me from while keeping my money. I typed a response. Sounds good. See you at 7. Can't wait to hear all about the plans. I added a heart emoji. Then I called my assistant. Sarah, clear my calendar for the next 48 hours. Cancel everything. If anyone asks, tell them I'm dealing with a family emergency. Is everything okay, Mr. Chen? No, I said honestly, but it will be. After she hung up, I sat in my office as the afternoon darkened into evening, watching the rain and waiting for the truth to reveal itself. Somewhere across the city, Melissa was probably getting ready for dinner, choosing the right dress, applying makeup, completely unaware that the ground beneath her feet had already started to crack. Soon, very soon, she'd discover what I'd learned in business, that every action has consequences. Every choice leaves a trail, and sometimes the person you underestimate is the most dangerous person in the room. But tonight, I'd play my part. I'd smile and nod and discuss seating charts. I'd be the devoted husband, the generous son-in-law, the man they thought they knew. And then, when I had all the pieces, I'd show them exactly who I was. The rain fell harder, drumming against the glass, like applause. The Sterling Room existed in a state of permanent twilight. Even at 7 o'clock on a December evening, with full darkness pressed against the windows, the restaurant maintained its signature amber glow candles, flickering in hurricane glasses, Edison bulbs strung like captured stars across exposed brick, mirrors reflecting light until the whole space seemed to shimmer with false warmth. It was the kind of place designed to make you forget the world outside, to create the illusion that time moved differently within its walls, slower and more forgiving. I'd always liked it here. Past tense, I realized, as the hostess led me through the dining room. Already, my mind was sorting my life into before and after, dividing my memories into categories. Things I believed then, things I know now. Caroline was already seated in our usual booth, the corner one with the burgundy velvet cushions and the view of the entire restaurant. She looked up as I approached, her face breaking into the warm smile I'd seen 1,000 times, the one that had made me believe, 7 years ago, that I was gaining not just a wife, but a family. Thomas, darling. She rose to embrace me, and I caught the scent of her perfume, something expensive and floral that probably cost more per ounce than most people spent on groceries. You look tired. Has my daughter been working you too hard with all these party preparations? I returned her embrace, feeling the delicate bones of her shoulders through her silk blouse. Caroline Whitmore was 60 years old and looked 45, the benefits of excellent genes, better cosmetic work, and a divorce settlement that had left her comfortable for life. She'd been married 3 times. Melissa's father, who'd died when Melissa was 12, a tech executive who'd lasted 18 months, and an investment banker who'd made it to year 3 before Caroline discovered his fondness for his 23-year-old assistant. Not at all, I said, settling into the booth across from her. You know I'm happy to help with anything you need. That's what I've always loved about you, Thomas. You're so generous. She reached across the table and patted my hand, her rings catching the candlelight. 3 carats on her left hand, 2 on her right, gifts from husbands past, worn like trophies. Melissa is so lucky to have found you. The words should have warmed me. Instead, they felt like coins tossed into a well, already sinking into darkness. Where is Melissa? I asked, checking my watch. 7:04 p.m. She was never late. Oh, she called a few minutes ago. Something about traffic on the 520. You know how it is. Caroline waved her hand dismissively and reached for her wine glass, already half empty, I noted. She'd started without us. She'll be here soon. In the meantime, we can start on the champagne. I ordered the Veuve Clicquot. It seemed appropriate given the celebration. A waiter appeared as if summoned, presenting a bottle beaded with condensation. I watched him pour, the liquid gold catching the light, bubbles rising like tiny revelations. Caroline raised her glass. To family, she said, her eyes bright with something that might have been tears, or might have been the wine she'd already consumed. And to you, Thomas, for making this whole thing possible. I touched my glass to hers, the crystal singing a clear, pure note. To family, I echoed, and took a sip that tasted like ashes. I have to tell you, Caroline continued, leaning forward conspiratorially. I was worried when Melissa first told me she wanted to marry you. You were so young, both of you, and you came from such different worlds. But you've proven me wrong in every way. You've been more than just a son-in-law, Thomas. You've been a true son. The son I never had. That's what she'd called me at our housewarming party, after 3 glasses of Prosecco had loosened her tongue. I'd been hanging pictures in the living room, and she'd stood in the doorway watching me, tears streaming down her carefully made-up face. My daughters gave me grandchildren, she'd said. But you've given me something I thought I'd lost, a son who actually gives a damn. I'd hugged her that day, genuinely moved. Melissa had 3 older half-siblings from her father's first marriage, but they'd never been close. Caroline had always wanted a son, she'd told me more than once, someone to carry on a legacy, to be strong when she was weak. I'd tried to be that for her. Apparently, I'd failed. Caroline, I said carefully, can I ask you something? Of course, darling. Anything. The party on Saturday. Are you happy with how everything is coming together? Her face lit up. Happy? Thomas, I'm beyond happy. It's going to be perfect. More than perfect. When Rebecca sent over the updated timeline this afternoon, I actually cried. Real tears. She laughed, touching her collarbone in that way she had when she was pleased with herself. 60 years old, and I'm crying over party schedules like a teenager. Updated timeline. The words landed with careful precision. Rebecca had already sent the cancellation notices. Then, the vendors were being notified, the deposits refunded, the machinery of celebration grinding to a halt. And yet, here sat Caroline, blissfully unaware, still believing in the fantasy of her perfect party. I'm glad, I said, and meant it in a strange way. There was something almost beautiful about her innocence, the complete faith that the world would continue to arrange itself around her desires. The only thing, she continued, lowering her voice, is that I'm a bit worried about the seating arrangement. You know how complicated family can be. Tell me about it. She pulled out her phone, scrolling through what appeared to be a detailed spreadsheet. I've got your sister Linda and her husband at table 4. But Linda isn't speaking to Aunt Joan, since that incident at Easter, you remember, the thing with the ham. So Joan needs to be at table 7. But that's where I was going to put the Hendersons, and Patricia Henderson is allergic to lilies, so I need to swap the centerpieces. I let her talk, watching her face animate with the minutiae of party planning. This was Caroline's element, the orchestration of events, the careful choreography of who sat where and who wore what and who would be photographed with whom. She'd made a second career out of it after her divorces, becoming the go-to event consultant for Seattle's wealthy elite. Other people's celebrations had become her purpose. And then there's the matter of the surprise, she was saying. Melissa insisted we keep it a secret, even from you, but between us. She leaned in closer, her breath wine-sweet. She's arranged for a video montage. Photos from my whole life, messages from old friends, the works. She's been collecting them for months. Isn't that sweet? Months. Melissa had been planning this party for months, assembling photos and messages and memories, building toward this moment of celebration. And somewhere in those months, she decided I didn't belong in it. Very sweet, I managed. She wanted it to be perfect for me. She knows how important this is. Caroline's eyes grew misty again. My 60th. It feels like such a milestone, doesn't it? Like I'm supposed to have achieved something by now, figured it all out. And most days, I feel like I'm still that 20-year-old girl who married Melissa's father, still trying to understand how life works. There was something raw in her voice, something real beneath the champagne and the party planning. For a moment, I saw past the facade to the woman underneath, lonely, uncertain, constructing elaborate celebrations to prove she was loved. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. You've achieved plenty, I said. You raised 4 children, built a successful consulting business, survived 3 marriages. That's not nothing. Survived. She laughed, but it sounded hollow. That's one way to put it. Sometimes I wonder if I'm just good at endings. You know? Good at walking away, starting over, pretending the previous chapter doesn't matter. She drained her champagne and reached for the bottle. But this party, this feels like something different. Like I'm not ending something, but celebrating what I've built. Does that make sense? Perfect sense, I said, watching her refill her glass with a hand that trembled slightly. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out discreetly. A text from Marcus. Preliminary findings are interesting. Very interesting. Call me when you can talk privately. I slipped the phone back into my pocket, my heart rate accelerating slightly. Interesting could mean many things. In Marcus's vocabulary, it usually meant, you're not going to like this, but you need to know. Everything okay? Caroline asked, noticing my distraction. Just work. Nothing urgent. I smiled, the expression feeling like a mask I'd strapped on too tightly. Tell me more about the video montage. What kind of photos did Melissa collect? Caroline's face softened with maternal pride. Oh, everything. Baby photos, wedding photos, all 3 weddings. Can you imagine? Pictures from my childhood that she got from my sister. She even tracked down some of my old college friends. There's this one photo of me from 1983 at a concert in Portland, wearing the most ridiculous outfit. She laughed, a genuine sound that reminded me why I'd liked her in the first place. I looked like I was auditioning for a punk band. Melissa said she's going to project it on a giant screen during dinner. I'll die of embarrassment. You'll love every minute of it, I said, because it was true. Caroline lived for moments like these, the chance to be the center of attention, to have her life validated and celebrated, to feel seen. I will, she admitted. Is that terrible? To want people to make a fuss over you? Not terrible. Human. She studied me for a moment, her expression shifting into something more contemplative. You're a good man, Thomas. I hope you know that. I hope Melissa tells you that. The words hung between us, weighted with meaning she didn't intend. Did Melissa tell me that? Had she ever? I tried to remember the last time she'd offered unprompted praise, affection that wasn't transactional or performative. The memories blurred together, all of them tinged with the knowledge I had now, poisoned by hindsight. She does. I lied. Good. Because she's not always the easiest person to live with, my daughter. She gets that from me, I'm afraid. The moods, the expectations, the need for things to be just so. Caroline's smile turned rueful. Her father used to say I could start an argument in an empty room. I think Melissa inherited that talent. This felt like dangerous territory, an invitation to bond over shared grievances. I'd seen Caroline do this before, offer small betrayals of loyalty, little tests to see if I'd join her in criticizing Melissa. I'd always declined, changing the subject or defending my wife. It seemed important, maintaining that boundary. But tonight, with Marcus's text burning in my pocket and Rebecca's voice echoing in my memory, she laughed when I confirmed the change. I found myself curious about what Caroline would say if I let her continue. Everyone has moods, I said neutrally. True. But Melissa's moods are... She paused, choosing her words carefully. Calculated. Even as a child, she knew exactly how to get what she wanted. She'd throw tantrums for her father, he was a softie, gave her everything. But with me, she was different. Colder. More strategic. Strategic how? Caroline swirled her champagne, watching the bubbles dance. She'd withhold affection when she was angry. Just ice me out, sometimes for days, until I apologized for whatever I'd done wrong. And the thing was, I usually didn't know what I'd done wrong. She'd just decide I'd failed her somehow, and that was it. Exile until I figured out how to fix it. I felt something cold settle in my chest. She did that as a child? From about age 8 onward. After her father died, it got worse. Caroline's voice dropped. I think she blamed me for his death in some way. He had a heart attack nothing anyone could have prevented, but in Melissa's mind, I should have known, should have seen it coming, should have saved him somehow. She punished me for years for that failure. I didn't know that. She wouldn't have told you. Melissa doesn't like people knowing she holds grudges. Caroline met my eyes, and for a moment, I saw something like warning in her gaze. But she does, Thomas. She holds them forever, and she never forgets. Before I could respond, movement at the edge of my vision drew my attention. Melissa was making her way through the restaurant, turning heads, as she always did, her dark hair catching the light, her burgundy dress fitting like it had been designed for her body specifically, her smile radiant and apologetic. "Sorry I'm late," she called out, still several tables away. "Traffic was absolutely insane." Caroline's face transformed, all traces of our previous conversation vanishing behind maternal delight. "Darling, we were just talking about you." Melissa reached our table, leaned down to kiss her mother's cheek, then turned to me. Her lips brushed mine, warm and familiar, carrying the faint taste of the mint she'd probably chewed in the car. "Hi, baby. Did you order already?" "Just champagne," I said, studying her face for any sign of guilt, any indication that she was carrying the weight of what she'd done. But there was nothing, just genuine pleasure at being here, excitement about the evening ahead. She slid into the booth beside me, her thigh pressing against mine, her perfume enveloping me in a cloud of jasmine and lies. "Mom, before we order, I have to show you the final proof for the invitations. The calligrapher did the most amazing job with the flourishes." She pulled out her phone, and the two of them bent over it, discussing fonts and flourishes and paperweight, their heads close together, completely absorbed. I watched them, these two women I'd thought I knew, and felt like an anthropologist observing an alien species. They looked alike in profile, the same elegant nose, the same high cheekbones, the same way of tilting their heads when considering something. Mother and daughter, bound by blood and secrets, and, apparently, a shared capacity for deception. "Thomas, what do you think?" Melissa turned the phone toward me. "The gold foil or the silver? Gefront." End quote. I looked at the screen, at the elegant script announcing Caroline Whitmore's 60th birthday celebration, at the date and time and venue, my venue, and the request for the pleasure of your company. My company, specifically, was not requested. "Gold?" I said. "It's warmer." "That's what I said." Caroline clapped her hands together. "Silver is too cold for December. Gold feels festive." "Gold it is, then." Melissa texted someone, presumably the calligrapher, and set her phone down with a satisfied smile. "Crisis averted. Now, can we please order? I'm starving." The waiter appeared, reciting specials I didn't hear. I ordered something beef, I think, or maybe fish, while my mind raced ahead, trying to understand the game being played. Was Melissa planning to tell me about the uninvitation? Was she waiting for some specific moment, building toward a dramatic reveal? Or was she simply going to let me show up on Saturday, only to be turned away at the door like an uninvited guest? The thought was almost funny. Almost. "And Thomas has been so generous with everything," Caroline was saying, having launched into what I recognized as her gratitude speech. She gave some version of it every time we had dinner, a litany of my contributions and kindnesses. The venue alone must have cost a fortune, and then the catering and the hotel rooms for everyone. "Mom, Thomas doesn't want to hear you go on about money," Melissa interrupted, but her tone was affectionate, indulgent. "I'm just saying, not every son-in-law would be so giving. Not every husband would support his wife's desire to make her mother's birthday special." "Thomas knows we appreciate him," Melissa said, and her hand found mine under the table, squeezing gently. "Don't you, baby?" I looked at her, really looked at her, trying to find the stranger who had called Rebecca Hartwell this morning, who had laughed about being free of me, who had erased my name while keeping my money. But all I saw was Melissa, my wife, her eyes warm with what looked like genuine affection. "I know," I said. Our food arrived, and the conversation shifted to lighter topics. Caroline's latest consulting project, Melissa's upcoming presentation at work, my thoughts on the Seattle real estate market. We ate and drank and laughed, performing the ritual of family dinner with practiced ease. And through it all, my phone stayed silent in my pocket, holding Marcus's findings, waiting to reveal whatever truth would shatter this careful illusion. I thought about Rebecca's voice. She laughed when I confirmed the change had been made. I thought about Caroline's warning. She holds grudges forever, and she never forgets. I thought about the seating chart Melissa had prepared for a party I wouldn't attend, the video montage she'd assembled over months of secret planning, the $60,000 deposit she'd kept while deleting my name. Earth, to Thomas. Melissa was waving her hand in front of my face, smiling. "Where did you go just now?" "Sorry," I said, returning from whatever dark place my mind had wandered. "Just thinking about work." "Always thinking about work." She leaned her head against my shoulder, a gesture of comfortable intimacy. "Promise me you'll take a break this weekend. Saturday especially. I want you to actually enjoy Mom's party, not spend the whole time on your phone." I felt Caroline's eyes on us, watchful and assessing. "I promise," I said, "that I will be fully present on Saturday." It was the truth, after all, just not in the way Melissa expected. I left the Sterling room at 10:47 p.m., alone. Melissa had decided to go home with Caroline girl talk, she'd said, kissing my cheek in the parking lot, her breath wine-sweet and her smile unburdened by conscience. "Mom wants to show me some old photo albums for the video montage. You don't mind, do you, baby?" I didn't mind. I told her to take her time, to enjoy the evening with her mother. I watched her slide into Caroline's Mercedes, watched them pull away into Seattle's rain-slicked streets, their laughter audible even through closed windows. Then I sat in my car for 5 full minutes, hands on the steering wheel, breathing in the silence. The rain had stopped, leaving the world wet and reflective. Every surface a mirror. The parking lot lights doubled themselves in puddles, creating the illusion of depth where there was only shallow water. Appropriate, I thought. Everything tonight had been like that: surface, reflections of depth, illusions of substance. My phone buzzed. "Marcus, right on schedule." "Tell me," I said, not bothering with greeting. "You sitting down?" "I'm in my car." "Good, because this is going to take a while, and none of it is good news." I heard him exhale, the sound of someone preparing to deliver a diagnosis. "Tom, how much do you know about your wife's finances?" "We keep separate accounts. It was her preference when we got married. She wanted to maintain her independence. But we have a joint account for household expenses, and I know roughly what she makes." "Why?" "Because Melissa has been moving money. A lot of money. Over the past 6 months, she's transferred approximately $240,000 from various accounts into a new account at a different bank, an account you're not on." I processed this slowly, the way you process information that doesn't fit the pattern you've built. 240,000. From where? That's the interesting part. Some of it came from her personal accounts, savings, investments, things she had before you married. But a significant portion came from withdrawals and transfers that trace back to your joint accounts. Small amounts, spread over time. Nothing that would trigger alerts, but it adds up. She's been stealing from me. Legally, it's complicated. The joint account is joint. But morally? Marcus paused. "Yeah, Tom. She's been stealing from you." I watched rainwater drip from the parking garage ceiling, each drop falling in perfect rhythm, like a clock counting down. What else? What else? Phone records show she's been in frequent contact with someone named David Reeves. Multiple calls per day, sometimes lasting an hour or more. Text messages in the hundreds. Does that name mean anything to you? David Reeves. I turned the name over in my mind, searching for recognition, finding nothing. No, who is he? That's where it gets interesting. David Reeves is a divorce attorney, one of the most expensive in Seattle. He specializes in high-net-worth divorces, specifically in securing maximum settlements for spouses who can prove they've been undervalued or financially abused. The word hung in the air between us. Divorce. How long has she been in contact with him? First call was 8 months ago, right around the time you guys got back from that anniversary trip to Hawaii. Hawaii. I remembered that trip, the sunset dinners, the snorkeling, the night we'd renewed our vows on the beach with just the waves as witnesses. Melissa had cried when she'd said her vows, tears streaming down her face as she promised to love me forever. I'd believed those tears were joy. 8 months ago, she'd been planning her exit. There's more, Marcus continued, his voice gentle in the way of someone delivering progressively worse news. Travel records show she took a trip to Portland 3 weeks ago. Told you she was at a work conference, right? Right. She was there, but not for work. She met with David Reeves at his office. He has a satellite location there. Meeting lasted 4 hours. That same day, she also met with someone named Jennifer Holbrook. Who's that? Real estate agent, specializes in luxury condos. According to my source, Melissa put down a deposit on a 2-bedroom unit in the Pearl District, downtown Portland. Waterfront views, 2,500 square feet. Purchase price, $1.2 million. The numbers weren't registering properly. My brain kept trying to find alternate explanations, ways this could make sense. Maybe it's an investment property. Maybe... Tom. Marcus's voice was firm, cutting through my rationalizations. She's buying a place to live. The paperwork lists her as the sole owner. There's no mention of you anywhere in the documentation. She's planning to move to Portland. I leaned my head back against the seat, closing my eyes. The darkness behind my eyelids was absolute, comforting in its simplicity. When? I asked. Best guess, based on the closing timeline? Early January, right after the holidays, right after her mother's birthday party, the party she'd uninvited me from. The party that was, I now understood, meant to be a goodbye, not just to Caroline's 50s, but to me, a celebration of Caroline's new chapter and Melissa's impending freedom. Is there someone else? The question came out steadier than I expected. I haven't found evidence of an affair, if that's what you're asking. But Tom, he hesitated. The way she's been moving money, the frequency of her communications with the attorney, the fact that she's already secured a place to live, this isn't a woman who's uncertain about leaving. This is a woman executing a plan. I opened my eyes, watching the parking lot lights swim in and out of focus. What kind of plan? My guess? She's been building a case, documenting everything, creating a narrative. The divorce attorney she's hired doesn't take cases unless there's a strong argument for a significant settlement. He's expensive because he wins, and he wins by painting his clients as victims. Victims of what? I've never touched her. I've never. Financial abuse, probably. Emotional manipulation. These cases don't require physical violence, Tom. They require a story. And if Melissa's been documenting things a certain way, collecting evidence that supports a narrative of control or manipulation, he trailed off, letting me finish the thought. I understood. In divorce court, truth was subjective. It wasn't about what actually happened. It was about what could be proven, what could be argued, what story resonated with a judge. And if Melissa had been building that story for 8 months, crafting it carefully with the help of a lawyer who specialized in exactly this kind of narrative, what does she stand to gain? I asked. You've been married 7 years. So, she'd be entitled to half of anything acquired during the marriage. But with a good attorney arguing financial abuse or that she sacrificed her career for the marriage, she could push for more. Alimony. Definitely. Maybe a portion of your business holdings, depending on how they're structured. The business was mine before we married. Doesn't matter if it grew during the marriage. If she can argue that her emotional support or sacrifice contributed to that growth, she's got a claim. Marcus's voice softened. In foundens come, impressingly into a view ender for. In foundens scoundens claim, to a view are come. In foundens scoundens 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 scoundens. In foundens scoundens scounden vacation scoundens scoundens scounden. Tom, I'm sorry. I know this isn't what you wanted to hear. What I wanted to hear, I said slowly, was the truth. So thank you. What are you going to do? I watched a young couple walk to their car, arms around each other, laughing about something. They looked happy. They looked the way Melissa and I must have looked to other people in love, secure, building a future together. I need you to keep digging, I said. I want to know everything. Every phone call, every transaction, every meeting. I want documentation of all of it. Can you do that? Of course. But Tom, you should probably talk to your own attorney. If she's 8 months into planning a divorce, I'll call David Morrison in the morning. But Marcus, I need you to understand something. This isn't about protecting my assets. I don't care about the money. Then what is it about? I thought about Melissa at dinner tonight. Her hand in mine, her head on my shoulder. I thought about the way she'd looked at her mother, the way they'd bent over the phone together, conspirators in their joy. I thought about the video montage she'd been assembling for months, collecting memories and messages, building toward a celebration I'd been erased from. It's about knowing, I said finally. She's been playing a role for 8 months, maybe longer. I want to know what's real and what's performance. I want to understand who I've been married to. And then I'll decide what kind of ending this story deserves. After I hung up, I didn't start the car immediately. I sat in the parking garage, watching water drip and lights reflect, and trying to reconcile the information Marcus had given me with the woman I thought I knew. Melissa, my wife, my partner, the person I'd built a life with. She'd been planning to leave me for 8 months. 8 months of ordinary mornings and routine evenings, of grocery shopping and dinner parties, and conversations about our future. 8 months of lying in bed beside me, her breathing steady in the darkness while she planned her escape. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through our text history. The messages read like any married couple's: mundane, affectionate, practical. Don't forget we're out of coffee. Love you. Have a good meeting. Thinking about Maui for our next anniversary. What do you think? Can you pick up my dry cleaning? Miss you. Hurry home. Every message a lie. Or maybe not a lie, exactly, but a performance. The language of a marriage that, on her end, was already over. I kept scrolling, going back months, looking for clues I'd missed. And there, from 9 months ago, right before Hawaii. I know things have been hard lately, but I want us to work on this. I want us to be happy again. Things have been hard. I stared at those words, trying to remember what she'd been referring to. We'd been fighting more, I remembered that. Arguments about small things, where to go for dinner, whether to attend some charity event, how much time I spent working. Normal married couple disagreements, I'd thought. Nothing worth documenting for a divorce attorney. But maybe that was the point. Maybe she'd been creating those conflicts, carefully constructing a narrative of dissatisfaction. Maybe every fight had been evidence. Every disagreement, a building block in her case against me. My phone rang. Melissa. I stared at her name on the screen, at the photo that came up with her contact, her laughing at something I'd said, her eyes bright, with what I'd thought was love. The photo was from our honeymoon 7 years ago. We'd been different people then. Or maybe we'd been exactly who we were now. I'd just been too stupid to see it. I answered. Hey. Hey, baby. I just wanted to let you know I'm going to stay at Mom's tonight. We're going through all these old albums, and it's getting late, and I've had too much wine to drive. Her voice was warm, slightly slurred. You don't mind, do you? Of course not. I'm glad you're having fun. We are. You should see some of these photos, Tom. Mom was such a fox in the 80s. Like, legitimately stunning. She laughed, the sound genuine and light. I hope I age half as well as she did. You will, I said automatically. You're sweet. Okay, I should go. Mom's pulling out her wedding albums, all 3 of them. This is going to be a long night. She paused. I love you. The words should have meant something. They'd always meant something before: a reassurance, a promise, a tether connecting us across whatever distance separated us. But now, with Marcus's findings fresh in my mind, they were just sounds, syllables arranged in a familiar pattern, signifying nothing. I love you too, I said, because what else was there to say? After she hung up, I started the car and drove home through empty streets. Our house was in Madison Park, an old Craftsman we'd bought 3 years ago and renovated together. Melissa had chosen the paint colors, the light fixtures, the landscaping. She'd spent months making it perfect, arranging furniture and hanging art, and creating a home that looked like something out of a magazine. I'd thought she was building our future. Apparently, she'd been creating a stage set, something beautiful to show in divorce proceedings. Look what I built. Look what I'll be forced to leave behind. I pulled into the driveway and sat for a moment. Looking at the house, our house, with its warm windows and manicured lawn, and the wreath Melissa had hung on the door last week. Everything about it screamed permanence, stability, home. Everything about it was a lie. Inside, the silence was oppressive. I turned on lights as I moved through the rooms, but the brightness only made the emptiness more obvious. This house was meant for two people. Without Melissa's presence, her music playing in the kitchen, her laptop open on the couch, her voice calling from upstairs, it felt hollow. I poured myself a whiskey and stood at the living room window, looking out at the neighborhood. Lights glowed in other houses, families moving through their evening rituals. I wondered how many of them were real, how many were just performances, how many people were building exit strategies while pretending to build futures. My phone buzzed. An email from David Morrison, sent at 11:30 p.m. Tom, I've been thinking about our conversation earlier. Before you do anything irreversible regarding the party or your marriage, we should talk. I can make time tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. if you want. You're my friend, and I'm worried about you. David. I appreciated the concern, but David was a lawyer. His job was to protect me legally, to minimize damage and exposure. What I needed wasn't legal protection. What I needed was understanding. I opened my laptop and pulled up our financial records, looking at them with new eyes. The joint account showed regular deposits, my contribution to household expenses, and regular withdrawals. Most were clearly legitimate: mortgage, utilities, groceries, restaurants. But there, scattered throughout, were other withdrawals. Small amounts, usually a few $100s, labeled as household misc or personal care. I'd never questioned them. Why would I? We were married. We shared expenses. Of course there would be miscellaneous costs. But now, with Marcus's information about the $240,000, I could see the pattern. A few hundred here, 1,000 there, always just below the threshold that would catch my attention. Over 6 months, it had added up to a significant portion of what she'd moved. My money, funding her escape. I thought about confronting her, demanding an explanation. But what would that accomplish? She'd deny it, or worse, she'd confess and force the conversation I wasn't ready to have. And I still didn't have the full picture. I still didn't understand why. That was the question that haunted me more than any other. Not what she was doing, Marcus had made that clear. But why? Why, after 7 years, had Melissa decided I was the enemy? What had I done, or failed to do, that justified this elaborate betrayal? I pulled out my phone and opened our photo gallery, scrolling through years of memories. Our wedding day, Melissa radiant in white, me unable to stop smiling. Vacations to Bali, Paris, Iceland. Holidays with Caroline and her family. Ordinary moments. Breakfast in bed. Walks in the park. Lazy Sundays reading the paper. In every photo, we looked happy. In every photo, we looked like people who loved each other. Had it all been performance? Had any of it been real? I stopped on a photo from last Christmas. We were standing in front of our tree, Melissa's arms around my waist, both of us wearing matching pajamas she'd bought as a joke. Her smile was genuine, reaching her eyes, crinkling the corners. I was looking at her, not the camera, my expression open and unguarded. That moment had felt real. I remembered it, the warmth of the fire, the smell of the cinnamon candles she always lit during the holidays, the way she'd laughed when she'd forced me into the ridiculous pajamas. We'd made love that night, slow and tender, and afterward she'd fallen asleep with her head on my chest, her breathing deep and even. Had she been planning to leave me even then? Had she looked at me across the pillow and thought about Portland, about her condo, about the life she was building without me? The thought was unbearable. I closed the photos and opened my email, drafting a message to David Morrison. David, 7 a.m. works. I'll bring coffee. We need to discuss asset protection and worst-case scenarios. Also, I need you to pull all documentation related to Chen Holdings' corporate structure. Every subsidiary, every holding company, every property deed. I want to know exactly what's vulnerable and what's protected. Tom. I hit send and immediately felt better. This was familiar territory, analysis, planning, strategy. This was business, and I understood business. You identified the problem. gathered data, developed a solution. You didn't get emotional. You didn't let sentiment cloud judgment. Melissa had made a calculation that leaving me was worth the effort, worth the deception, worth the risk. I could make calculations too. I pulled up a blank document and started typing, creating what I mentally labeled my own evidence file. Everything I knew, everything Marcus had found, everything I suspected. Dates, transactions, conversations, the uninvitation to the party, the laughter Rebecca had mentioned, the Portland condo, the divorce attorney, the careful withdrawal of funds. I documented all of it, clinical and precise, building a case the way Melissa had been building hers. But underneath the clinical language, underneath the bullet points and timestamps, anger was building. Not the hot, explosive anger of sudden betrayal, but something colder and more patient. The anger of someone who'd been played, who'd been considered stupid enough to not notice, to not care, to not respond. Melissa had underestimated me. She'd thought I'd be easy to leave, easy to take advantage of, easy to erase from her mother's celebration while keeping my money. She was about to learn otherwise. I worked until 3 a.m., documenting everything, creating timelines, building my understanding of what had been done to me and why. When I finally closed my laptop, I felt strangely calm. The shock had worn off, replaced by something clearer and harder. I climbed the stairs to our bedroom, my bedroom now, I supposed, and lay on top of the covers, still fully dressed. Sleep felt impossible, but I closed my eyes anyway, letting my mind drift. Tomorrow, I'd meet with David. We'd discuss strategies and protections and legal ramifications. We'd build defenses against whatever case Melissa and her expensive attorney were preparing. But tonight, in the darkness, I allowed myself to grieve. Not for the marriage I was losing, that I was beginning to understand, had been lost long ago, but for the person I'd believed Melissa to be, for the future I'd imagined, for the version of myself who'd trusted completely, loved without reservation, believed in the possibility of forever. That person was gone now, dissolved in the truth of bank transfers and secret condos, and laughter about being free. In his place was someone harder, someone more careful, someone who understood that love was just another currency, and some people would always value what they could take over what they'd been given. Outside, rain began again, soft against the windows. Inside, I lay in the darkness and planned my next move. David Morrison's office occupied the corner suite on the 42nd floor of the Columbia Tower, with floor-to-ceiling windows that framed Elliott Bay like a painting someone had paid too much for. At 7 in the morning, the water was still dark, the sun just beginning to suggest itself behind the Cascades, turning the eastern sky the color of bruised fruit. I arrived with coffee, as promised, 2 large Americanos from the place David liked, the one that charged $8 and actually deserved it. He was already at his desk when his assistant showed me in, his tie loosened despite the early hour, reading glasses perched on his nose, surrounded by what appeared to be every document related to my life. "Jesus, Tom." He looked up as I entered, and I saw genuine concern in his eyes. David and I had been friends since business school, had stood up at each other's weddings, had built our respective empires with the kind of competitive camaraderie that only comes from mutual respect. "You look like hell." "Didn't sleep much." I handed him his coffee and settled into one of the leather chairs across from his desk. Through the window behind him, a ferry was cutting across the bay, its wake spreading like a scar on dark water. "I've been up since 4 going through everything you sent me." He gestured at the papers spread across his desk. "And I have to tell you, this is worse than I thought." "How bad?" He took a long sip of coffee, buying time, the way lawyers do when they're about to deliver a diagnosis you won't like. "If Melissa has been working with David Reeves for 8 months, she's not just planning a divorce. She's planning to take you apart." "Explain." David pulled a legal pad toward him, already covered in his precise handwriting. "Reeves is expensive because he's strategic. He doesn't just file paperwork and negotiate settlements. He builds cases. He finds angles. And his specialty, his particular genius, if you want to call it that, is reframing the narrative. Marcus mentioned something about financial abuse. That's the likely angle, yes. Here's how it works. Reeves will argue that you used your wealth to control Melissa, to make her dependent, to isolate her from opportunities. He'll point to the fact that you kept separate accounts, your preference, she'll say, not hers. He'll highlight every expensive gift you gave her mother as evidence that you were buying loyalty, manipulating family relationships. I thought about the birthday party, the $60,000, the way Caroline had praised my generosity just last night. That's insane. I kept separate accounts because Melissa wanted independence. I gave Caroline gifts because she's family. I believe you. But Reeves is very good at taking facts and wrapping them in a different story. David flipped through his notes. The Portland condo is particularly problematic. If she's put down a deposit with money she's been moving from your joint accounts, she can argue she was forced to hide money because you controlled all the finances. The fact that you make significantly more than her, that your name is on most of the major assets, it all feeds into a narrative of imbalance. What about the fact that she's been lying for 8 months? That she's been planning this while pretending everything was fine? Unfortunately, that's not illegal. Morally questionable, yes, but the court doesn't care about morality. It cares about assets and entitlements and who can make the most compelling case. He leaned back, his chair creaking. Tom, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Always. Have you ever done anything that could be interpreted as controlling? Questioned her spending? Made comments about her career choices? Suggested what she should wear or who she should see? I started to say no, then stopped, because the truth was more complicated than that. We've had arguments about money, about time, about priorities. I've mentioned that some of her friends seem toxic. I've suggested she might be happier in a different career path. But those were conversations, David, not control. In Reeves's hands, conversations become evidence. Arguments become patterns. Suggestions become mandates. He pulled out another document. I went through your joint account history like you asked. The withdrawals Melissa made, the ones that add up to her Portland fund, they're all labeled as household expenses or personal care. If she's documented those as things she needed that you wouldn't pay for, if she can show she felt she had to hide basic purchases. She didn't have to hide anything. We had an agreement about the joint account. She had full access to her own money. Can you prove that? Do you have emails or texts where you explicitly told her she had complete financial freedom? I tried to remember. Our financial arrangement had been established early in the marriage, mostly through conversations that had seemed unremarkable at the time. Melissa had wanted to keep her own accounts, maintain her independence. I'd agreed, set up the joint account for shared expenses. Never questioned how she spent her own money. But had I documented that agreement? Had I ever put it in writing? No, I admitted. Then it's your word against hers. And if she's been documenting things differently, if she has a paper trail that supports her version of events, he trailed off, letting me finish the thought. I stood and walked to the window, looking down at the city waking below. From 42 floors up, the people were invisible, reduced to the movement of cars and buses, the glow of traffic lights. Everything looked orderly from this height, manageable, like a model city you could rearrange at will. What are my options? I asked. Legally, we can prepare for the divorce she's planning. I can structure your assets to minimize exposure, set up trusts, move things around. But Tom, if we do that, and she finds out, it looks like you're hiding money. It feeds right into her narrative. And if I don't? If she files and we're not prepared, she could potentially claim half of everything acquired during the marriage, plus alimony, plus a portion of Chen Holdings, if Reeves can argue that the company's growth during your marriage was partially due to her support or sacrifice. The numbers he was implying were staggering. Chen Holdings was worth hundreds of millions. Even a small percentage would be life-changing money. How much could she get? I asked. David was quiet for a moment. Worst-case scenario, with Reeves's track record and the right judge, 50 to 70 million, maybe more if they can make the financial abuse angle stick. 50 to 70 million dollars. The amount was almost abstract, too large to feel real. I'd built Chen Holdings from nothing, worked 100-hour weeks, taken risks that kept me awake at night. sacrificed relationships and health and peace of mind. And Melissa, who'd been planning to leave me for 8 months, who'd lied and stolen and erased me from her family's celebration, could walk away with half of it. There has to be another option, I said. There is. David's voice was careful, measured. You could file first, beat her to it, control the narrative, instead of responding to hers. I turned from the window. Explain. If you file for divorce before she does, you set the terms. You frame the story. You're not the controlling husband being escaped from. You're the betrayed spouse seeking separation from someone who's been systematically stealing and planning behind your back. He pulled out a fresh legal setter, pad. Marcus's investigation gives you documentation. The bank transfers, the Portland condo, the communications with Reeves, all of it supports a case that Melissa has been preparing to leave while continuing to take financial advantage of the marriage. But I'd have to actually file for divorce. Yes. The word hung between us, heavy with implications. Filing for divorce meant admitting the marriage was over. It meant making public what was still, technically, private. It meant stepping into a process that would consume months or years, that would turn our life together into evidence and exhibits, that would reduce love to litigation. Is that what you think I should do? I asked. David removed his glasses, rubbed his eyes. As your lawyer, yes. As your friend. He sighed. Tom, I've known you for 15 years. I've never seen you like this. You look like someone's died. Someone has, I said quietly. The person I thought I married. Maybe. Or maybe she's been there all along, and you just didn't see her clearly. He stood, joining me at the window. You're one of the smartest people I know, Tom. You build empires. You see 3 moves ahead in business. But in your personal life, you've always been too trusting. You assume people have the same values you do, the same integrity. Is that a flaw? It's human, but it makes you vulnerable to people like Melissa, people who know how to use trust as a weapon. He paused. The question is, what do you want the ending to be? I thought about the party on Saturday, about Caroline's 60th birthday celebration that would never happen. I thought about Melissa staying at her mother's house tonight, going through photo albums, building toward a celebration I'd been erased from. I thought about the video montage she'd been preparing for months, the careful documentation of Caroline's life, the surprise she was so proud of. I want the truth to matter, I said finally. I want there to be consequences for lying, for stealing, for treating another person like they're disposable. Then we need to be strategic. Filing for divorce is one option, but it's not the only one. We could also... He stopped, studying my face. What are you thinking? Saturday, I said. The party that's not going to happen. Melissa doesn't know I've canceled it yet, does she? I wouldn't think so. Rebecca would have contacted Caroline directly, not Melissa. And Caroline doesn't know I've been uninvited. How could she? Melissa did that directly with the event planner. I felt something click into place, a strategy forming. So, as far as Melissa knows, everything is proceeding as planned. The party is still on. Her mother is still expecting the celebration of a lifetime, and I'm still in the dark about being uninvited. Yes, but Tom, what does that? David's eyes widened as he understood. Oh, you're not serious. Why not? Because it's cruel. Caroline hasn't done anything wrong. She's just a woman who wants to celebrate her birthday. Caroline called me the son she never had, I said, hearing the edge in my own voice. She let me fund this entire party, let me book venues and arrange catering and pay for hotel rooms. And when Melissa uninvited me, do you think Caroline questioned it? Do you think she called me to ask what happened, to make sure I was okay? You don't know that she rowed. Marcus has phone records. Caroline and Melissa talked for 40 minutes the day after Melissa called Rebecca. 40 minutes, David. They discussed it. Caroline knows, or at least suspects, and she chose to say nothing. Last night at dinner, she sat across from me. Let me pay for her meal. Thanked me for my generosity. and never mentioned that I'd been erased from her party. David was quiet, processing this. So you want to let them think the party is still happening? Let them show up to find nothing. No venue, no catering, no celebration. Just the truth. Tom, I understand you're angry, but this isn't just about Melissa and Caroline. There are other guests. People who've made travel plans, who've arranged their schedules, all of whom received invitations paid for by me to a party funded by me at a venue owned by me. I have every right to cancel. Legally, yes. Morally, it's more complicated. I turned to face him fully. David, my wife has been planning to divorce me for 8 months. She's stolen nearly $250,000. She's bought a condo in another city. She's hired an attorney who specializes in destroying men like me. And she did all of this while sharing my bed, eating my food, accepting my gifts. She looked me in the eye every single day and lied. I know. So don't talk to me about morality. Don't tell me I'm being cruel for letting people experience one ruined party when she's been ruining my entire life. My voice had risen, the anger I'd been keeping carefully controlled finally breaking through. David watched me with something like pity, which somehow made it worse. I'm sorry, I said after a moment, forcing myself to calm. I'm not angry at you. I know. He returned to his desk, shuffling papers, giving us both a moment to reset. Okay, let's say you do this. Let's say you let Saturday play out. What happens afterward? That depends on what else Marcus finds. I've asked him to keep digging. I want to know everything. Who else knows about Melissa's plans? Whether there's anyone else involved? What her timeline looks like. Once I have the complete picture, I'll decide how to proceed. And the party cancellation? You're committed to that? Completely. David made a note on his legal pad. Then we need to make sure it's documented correctly. Every cancellation notice, every refund, every communication with vendors, I want it all on record. If this ends up in court, I want to show that you acted within your rights as the party's financial backer. Fine. I also think we should prepare divorce papers, just in case. If Melissa finds out about the party cancellation before Saturday, if she accelerates her timeline, we need to be ready to respond. The word still felt strange. Divorce. After 7 years of marriage, after all the moments we'd shared, it seemed impossible that it could come down to legal documents and asset division. But maybe that's all marriage ever was. A contract, an agreement, a partnership that could be dissolved when one party decided the terms no longer suited them. Do it, I said. David nodded, making more notes. One more thing. You need to talk to someone. A therapist, a counselor, someone who isn't your lawyer or your investigator. Because Tom, what you're going through, it's trauma, and you can't just bury it under strategy and revenge. It's not revenge. Then what is it? I thought about Melissa's laugh when Rebecca confirmed the change. I thought about Caroline's hand on mine at dinner, her voice warm with false affection. I thought about the video montage, the seating charts, the careful orchestration of a celebration I'd been erased from. Justice, I said finally. It's just justice. David looked at me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he nodded slowly, accepting my answer even if he didn't agree with it. Okay, he said. Then let's make sure we do this right. We spent the next 2 hours going through everything: asset lists, account numbers, corporate structures, potential vulnerabilities. David asked questions I didn't want to answer, pushed on details I wanted to avoid, forced me to confront realities I'd been trying to ignore. By the time we finished, the sun had fully risen, flooding his office with hard winter light. The city below had come alive, filled with people pursuing their normal lives, unaware that in this office, 42 floors above them, a marriage was being systematically dismantled. I'll have the divorce papers ready by tomorrow, David said as I prepared to leave, along with a complete asset protection strategy. And Tom? He waited until I met his eyes. Be careful. The person you're planning to hurt on Saturday, she's also the person you've loved for 7 years. Make sure you're ready for what comes after. I thought about that as I rode the elevator down, as I walked through the lobby and out into the cold morning. Was I ready? Could anyone be ready for this kind of ending? My phone buzzed, A text from Melissa. Morning, baby. Stayed up way too late with mom looking at photos. Found the most embarrassing one of me from high school. Mom wants to include it in the video montage and I'm dying. How did you sleep? I stared at the message, at the casual intimacy of it, the complete absence of guilt. She was still performing, still playing the role of devoted wife. Completely confident that I didn't know, that I wouldn't find out, that I was too stupid or too trusting or too in love to see what she was doing. I typed a response. Slept great. Can't wait to see the embarrassing photo. I'm sure you were adorable. Love you. I hit send and felt nothing. Whatever capacity I'd had for loving Melissa Chen had died sometime in the past 12 hours, replaced by something colder and more calculating. The person typing those words wasn't her husband anymore. He was an investigator, a strategist, someone gathering evidence and planning moves. Another text came through, this time from Marcus. Found something interesting about the Portland condo. Call when you can. I called immediately. Tell me, I said, not bothering with greeting. The condo Melissa bought? She's not the only owner. There's a second name on the deed. My heart rate accelerated. Who? David Reeves, her divorce attorney. They're co-owners of the property. I stopped walking, standing in the middle of the sidewalk while people flowed around me. Her attorney owns the condo with her? Is that even legal? It's unusual, Marcus said carefully. Very unusual. Attorneys aren't supposed to have financial entanglements with clients. It's an ethics violation. So what does it mean? I'm not sure yet, but Tom, I think there might be more going on here than just a divorce plan. I think you need to consider the possibility that Melissa and Reeves are. End quote. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The divorce attorney, the co-owned condo, the 8 months of phone calls and meetings, the trip to Portland that Melissa had lied about. Not just a lawyer helping a client, something more. Find out, I said, my voice tight. I want to know everything about David Reeves, his background, his other cases, his relationships, everything. Already on it. I'll have more by tonight. After I hung up, I stood on the sidewalk for a long time, watching the city move around me, trying to process this new information. An affair would almost be easier to understand than what I'd thought was happening. Betrayal for love, for passion, for human connection, that at least made sense. But this? A calculated partnership between a wife and her divorce attorney, building toward what, exactly? My phone buzzed again. Caroline this time. Thomas, darling. I forgot to mention last night I've invited a few surprise guests to the party. People from my past that Melissa doesn't know about. Old friends from my modeling days. I hope that's okay. I'm so excited for Saturday. I read the message twice, then smiled. Caroline had no idea she was celebrating alone. Melissa had no idea I knew about Portland, about Reeves, about the money. And I had 3 more days to discover exactly what they were planning before the truth destroyed everything. 3 days until Saturday. 3 days until the party that would never happen. 3 days until everyone learned what it cost to underestimate Thomas Chen. Wednesday passed like a fever dream. I went to the office, attended meetings, reviewed contracts, made decisions about investments and acquisitions, and quarterly projections. I spoke to people, shook hands, smiled at appropriate moments. I was present in my body, performing the functions expected of me, while my mind existed somewhere else entirely, in a Portland condo I'd never seen, in phone records that spelled out betrayal in the space between what I knew and what I was supposed to know. Sarah, my assistant, noticed something was wrong. She'd worked for me for 6 years, long enough to read my moods, to know when I was focused and when I was merely pretending. Mr. Chen, she said around 3 o'clock, appearing in my doorway with the careful posture of someone approaching a wounded animal. You've been staring at that same spreadsheet for 20 minutes without moving. Are you sure you don't want to reschedule your afternoon calls? I looked down at my computer screen. She was right. The cursor blinked in the same cell it had occupied since I'd opened the file, the numbers swimming meaninglessly before my eyes. I'm fine, I said. Just tired. You've said that 4 times today. She stepped into the office, closing the door behind her. With respect, sir, you're not fine. You look like you haven't slept in days. Should I call Mrs. Chen? The suggestion was innocuous, the natural concern of an assistant who'd coordinated anniversary gifts and birthday surprises, who'd booked romantic weekend getaways and sent flowers on my behalf. Sarah believed in my marriage the way I'd believed in it, as a fixed point, a certainty, something that didn't require examination. No, I said too quickly. Don't call her. I'm just dealing with some personal matters. Nothing for you to worry about. Sarah studied me with eyes that had seen too much: my late nights before major deals, my stress before board meetings, my exhaustion after international travel. This was different, and she knew it. Is there anything I can do? She asked quietly. I almost told her. The impulse came from nowhere, a sudden desperate need to share the weight I'd been carrying alone. To say the words out loud. My wife is leaving me. She's been planning it for months. She's stolen from me, lied to me, erased me from her family, while smiling to my face. But saying it would make it real, in a way it wasn't yet. As long as I kept the knowledge contained, controlled, it remained mine to weaponize. The moment I spoke it, it would become gossip, speculation, a story that would spread through my company and my social circle like a virus. Hold my calls for the rest of the day, I said instead. And Sarah, thank you for caring, but I won. She nodded, understanding there was nothing more to say, and left me alone with my meaningless spreadsheets and my spiraling thoughts. My phone rang at 4:17 p.m. Marcus. I've got more, he said without preamble, and you're really not going to like this. I closed my laptop, swiveled my chair to face the window. Outside, Seattle was gray and wet, the way it always was in December. Rain streaked the glass, distorting the city into abstract shapes. Tell me, David Reeves isn't just Melissa's divorce attorney. He's also been her companion, for lack of a better word, for at least 6 months. I've got photos of them together at restaurants in Portland, going into and out of the condo, walking through the Pearl District, holding hands. In one photo from 3 weeks ago, they're kissing. The words landed without impact, like rain on water. I'd suspected this since this morning, had been preparing myself for confirmation, and yet, hearing it stated plainly, still felt like a punch I'd seen coming but couldn't avoid. 6 months, I said slowly. She's been sleeping with her divorce attorney for 6 months, at minimum. The earliest photo I have is from late June, but there could be more I haven't found yet. Marcus paused. Tom, this changes everything legally. If we can prove that Reeves and Melissa started a relationship before the divorce proceedings began, we've got grounds to have him disbarred. Attorney-client sexual relationships are strictly prohibited, especially when the attorney stands to benefit financially from the divorce. The condo, I said, understanding. He's not just her attorney. He's her partner in stealing from me. Exactly. Think about it. Reeves knows exactly how much you're worth. He has access to all the information he'd need to help Melissa maximize her take. The $240,000 she's moved? I'd bet anything he advised her on that, helped her structure it to look legitimate. And the condo purchase, with both their names on the deed, that's not just an affair. That's a conspiracy. I thought about Melissa in Portland 3 weeks ago, the trip she'd lied about. In my mind, I saw her in that condo, their condo wrapped in sheets, with a man I'd never met, planning my destruction. I saw them discussing strategy over wine, calculating what they could take, how they could frame it, what narrative would play best in court. How much does Reeves stand to gain from this? I asked. If he gets Melissa a $50 million settlement, his fee would be substantial. Attorneys like Reeves typically take 30 to 40% in cases like these. We're talking $15 to $20 million. Plus, if they're planning a future together, he gets access to her settlement money. It's the perfect crime. Really, he helps her take you apart legally, pockets a massive fee, and ends up with a wealthy partner. $15 to $20 million. That was Reeves's incentive for destroying my life. And Melissa, she'd get the rest, plus her freedom. plus the satisfaction of revenge for whatever perceived wrongs she'd been cataloging for 8 months. "Send me everything," I said. "Photos, documentation, timelines. I want it all." "Already done. Check your secure email." Marcus hesitated. "Tom, are you okay? I know this is a lot to process." Was I okay? I examined the question like a puzzle, trying to find an honest answer. I didn't feel okay. I felt hollowed out, scraped clean, like someone had reached inside my chest and removed everything that made me human, leaving only the mechanical parts that kept me breathing. "I don't know," I said finally. "Ask me again on Sunday." After we hung up, I opened my secure email and downloaded Marcus's files. Photos loaded one by one, each a small violence. Melissa and David Reeves at a restaurant, her hand on his across the table. Melissa and David Reeves, walking along the waterfront, his arm around her shoulders. Melissa and David Reeves entering the Portland condo, her head tilted back in laughter. Melissa and David Reeves kissing on a street corner, her hands in his hair, his hands on her waist, both of them oblivious to the world around them. I studied that last photo for a long time. Melissa's face was visible in profile, her eyes closed, her expression one of complete abandon. She looked happy. More than happy, she looked free. Had she ever looked at me like that? Even in our early days, when everything was new and we couldn't keep our hands off each other, had she ever worn that expression of pure, unguarded joy? I tried to remember and couldn't. What I remembered instead was her careful control, the way she calibrated her responses, the subtle sense I'd always had that she was performing some version of herself rather than simply being. Maybe this was who she really was. Maybe David Reeves got to see the real Melissa, the one who existed beneath the performance, while I'd been given only the carefully constructed facade. The thought should have hurt more than it did. My phone buzzed. A text from Melissa. "Hey baby, Mom and I are going dress shopping for the party. She wants my opinion on what to wear. I'll probably be home late. Don't wait up." I stared at the heart emoji, that small symbol that had become grotesque in its falseness. Dress shopping. Caroline was buying a dress for a party that had been canceled, that would never happen, that existed now only as a shared delusion she and Melissa were cultivating together. I could end it right now. I could text back, "The party's canceled. I know about Portland. I know about David Reeves. This marriage is over." 3 sentences, and the pretense would collapse. The performance would end, the truth would be spoken. But I didn't type those words. Instead, I wrote, "Have fun. Tell your mom I said she'll look beautiful, no matter what she chooses." The lie came easily, smoothly, like I'd been practicing it my whole life. I hit send and felt something shift inside me, some final barrier dissolving. If Melissa could lie while planning to destroy me, I could lie while planning to expose her. If she could smile and kiss me and share my bed while stealing my money and my future, I could smile and text and play the devoted husband while documenting every piece of evidence that would destroy her case. We were both performing now. The only difference was that I knew we were performing. That knowledge was power. Melissa came home at 11:43 p.m., smelling of wine and Caroline's perfume and something else, guilt, maybe, or just the accumulated weight of her deceptions. I was in bed, reading, or pretending to read. Actually, I'd been staring at the same page of a legal thriller for an hour, the words meaningless shapes. "Hey," she said. Appearing in the doorway of our bedroom, my bedroom, her cheeks flushed, her smile bright. "You're still awake." "Couldn't sleep," I said, which was true. I hadn't slept properly since Rebecca's call on Tuesday. My body was running on adrenaline and anger and something darker that I didn't want to examine too closely. She kicked off her heels and padded across the room in bare feet, the dress she'd worn to dinner, burgundy, clingy, expensive, moving with her body. Once, that sight would have stirred desire. Now it just looked like costuming, another element of the performance. "Mom found the perfect dress," she said, settling onto the bed beside me. "It's this gorgeous emerald green, very elegant." She's going to look stunning on Saturday. Saturday, 3 days away. 3 days until Caroline discovered that her perfect party, her celebration of a lifetime, had been reduced to nothing. 3 days until Melissa's careful planning collided with my carefully planned response. "I'm sure she will," I said. Melissa studied me, her head tilted in that way she had when she was analyzing something. "You seem distant. Is everything okay with work?" The question was casual, but I heard the calculation beneath it. She was testing me, checking to see if I suspected anything, if I'd discovered her plans. This was part of her performance, the concerned wife, attentive to her husband's moods, invested in his well-being. "Just tired," I said, the lie I'd been telling all day. "Big deal closing tomorrow. Lot of moving pieces." "Anything I can help with?" She reached out, her hand finding mine, her thumb tracing circles on my palm. The gesture was intimate, familiar, one she'd made 1,000 times before. It meant nothing now. Or maybe it had always meant nothing, and I'd just been too blind to see. "No, but thank you for offering." She leaned in and kissed me, her lips soft, tasting faintly of the wine she'd shared with her mother. I kissed her back, matching her performance with my own, and felt absolutely nothing. When she pulled away, she was smiling. "I love you. You know that? Even when you're being mysterious and weird, I love you too," I said, and the words felt like coins dropped into a well, already sinking into darkness. She disappeared into the bathroom, and I heard the water running, the familiar sounds of her nighttime routine. I picked up my phone and scrolled through the photos Marcus had sent, studying the woman in those images laughing, kissing, free, and trying to reconcile her with the woman brushing her teeth 20 feet away. They were the same person. That was the thing I kept returning to, the truth I couldn't escape. The woman planning to destroy me, and the woman who just kissed me goodnight, were not two separate people. They were one person, containing multitudes, capable of profound deception while maintaining perfect normalcy. How had I missed it? What signs had I ignored? What red flags had I rationalized away? I'd built a career on reading people, on seeing through facades, on identifying risks before they materialized. But in my own marriage, I'd been blind, or maybe not blind, maybe willfully ignorant. Maybe I'd seen the truth and chosen not to acknowledge it, because acknowledging it would mean confronting realities I wasn't ready to face. Melissa emerged from the bathroom in her pajamas, cotton shorts, and one of my old t-shirts. The casual intimacy of long-term couplehood. She climbed into bed beside me, her body warm against mine, fitting into the space she'd occupied for 7 years. "Thomas?" Her voice was soft, already drowsy. "Yeah?" "After the party, after everything settles down with Mom's birthday, can we take a trip somewhere? Just the two of us? I feel like we haven't had real time together in months." I felt her words like a blade between my ribs. After the party, after she'd planned to leave, after she'd already bought her condo in Portland, already established her new life with David Reeves. She was talking about trips, about time together, about a future that didn't exist. Or maybe this was part of her strategy. Maybe Reeves had advised her to seem invested, to create documentation of attempts at reconciliation, to build a case that she'd tried to save the marriage while I'd been distant and unavailable. "Sure," I said. "Where do you want to go?" "Somewhere warm. Maybe Mexico? Or the Caribbean? Somewhere we can just lie on a beach and forget about everything else." I thought about lying on a beach with Melissa, watching her in a bikini, sharing drinks and conversation, pretending our marriage was something worth saving. I thought about her smiling at me while thinking about David Reeves, while planning her escape, while counting down the days until she could be free. "That sounds nice," I said. She made a small, contented sound and pressed closer. Within minutes, her breathing had deepened, smoothed into the rhythm of sleep. I lay awake beside her, listening to her breathe, feeling the weight of her against my side, and tried to remember when I'd stopped being a person to her and become instead an obstacle to be managed. My phone buzzed, the vibration loud in the quiet room. I reached for it carefully, not wanting to wake Melissa, and saw a text from David Morrison. "Divorce papers ready. Asset protection strategy finalized. Standing by for your instructions." I looked at Melissa's sleeping face, peaceful and unburdened, dreaming whatever dreams people dream when they've spent the day planning betrayal. She looked young like this, vulnerable, almost innocent. It was easy to forget, seeing her this way, that she was capable of the calculated destruction she'd been engineering. But I couldn't afford to forget, couldn't afford sentiment or nostalgia or the ghost of whatever love I'd once felt. I texted David back. Hold position. Will advise after Saturday. After Saturday. After the truth revealed itself in the absence of the party. After Caroline and Melissa discovered what happened when you underestimated someone's capacity for response. I set my phone aside and stared at the ceiling, listening to my wife breathe beside me, counting down the hours until everything changed. Thursday morning arrived gray and cold, winter pressing against the windows like a threat. I woke before Melissa, showered, dressed for the office in the armor of expensive suits and Italian leather. By the time she emerged from the bedroom, sleepy and soft, I was already gone, leaving only a note on the kitchen counter. Early meeting. Love you. Teeper. End quote. End quote. Like, subscribe. End quote. End quote. End quote. End quote. The office was quiet this early, just security guards and cleaning crews, the building not yet animated by the hundreds of people who would fill it in a few hours. I liked it this way, the emptiness, the silence, the sense of being alone in a space designed for crowds. I made coffee in my office, strong and black, and pulled up the files Marcus had sent. Time to know everything, to understand the full scope of what had been done to me. The financial records told a story of systematic theft, not large enough to trigger alarms, but persistent, methodical, professional. This wasn't impulse. This was strategy. Someone had taught Melissa how to do this, had shown her the blind spots in our accounts, had helped her structure the withdrawals to look legitimate. David Reeves, obviously. This was his expertise, finding money, moving money, hiding money, until it was time to claim it in court. I pulled up everything I could find on Reeves online. His firm's website showed a polished professional in his mid-40s, handsome in that lawyer-way expensive haircut, perfect teeth, a smile that promised to fight for you while quietly calculating his percentage. His bio listed impressive credentials: Stanford Law, a decade at a top Seattle firm before going independent, a track record of winning substantial settlements for clients in high-net-worth divorces. There were testimonials from grateful clients, all women, all describing how Reeves had saved them, had fought for them, had finally made them feel valued. I wondered how many of those clients he'd slept with, how many condos he co-owned, how many conspiracies he'd engineered under the guise of legal representation. My phone rang. Marcus, calling at 7:15 a.m. Please tell me you have good news, I said. Define good. I've got useful news, but I'm not sure it qualifies as good. Papers rustled in the background. I've been digging into Reeves's history. He's done this before. This? Relationships with clients during divorce proceedings. I found 2 other cases where he represented women in high-net-worth divorces and ended up in relationships with them after the cases concluded. One of those relationships led to marriage. They're still together, living in a house that her ex-husband's settlement helped buy. Jesus. It gets better. Or worse, depending on your perspective. In 3 other cases, Reeves's clients filed complaints about his behavior during their divorces. The complaints were settled quietly, sealed by NDAs, but I've got a source at the Bar Association who gave me the general outline. Sexual advances, financial entanglements, conflicts of interest. Nothing that got him disbarred, but enough to establish a pattern. So he's done this before. Found vulnerable clients, seduced them, used them to pad his bank account. That's my read, yes. And Tom, here's the thing. In every case where there was a complaint, the client discovered what he was doing and tried to back out. The divorces got messy, the settlements were smaller than expected, and Reeves walked away with his fee while the client was left dealing with the fallout. I felt something cold settle in my chest. You think he's using Melissa? I think Melissa believes she's in a partnership with a man who loves her and will build a new life with her in Portland. I think Reeves sees a gullible client with access to a wealthy husband and a willingness to do whatever it takes to secure a big settlement. When this is over, when he's got his fee and helped himself to her divorce money, I think he'll disappear. The thought should have made me feel better, Melissa, getting betrayed in turn, experiencing the same deception she'd inflicted on me. Poetic justice, karma, the universe balancing itself. But instead, I felt something unexpected. Pity. Melissa was being used. She thought she'd found love, freedom, a partner in escape. Instead, she'd found a predator who saw her as a payday. Tom? You still there? I'm here, I said. Just processing. What do you want to do with this information? I thought about Saturday, about the party that wouldn't happen, about the revelation that was coming. I thought about Melissa's face when she discovered the truth, about Caroline's disappointment, about the cascade of consequences that would follow. And I thought about David Reeves, sitting in Portland in a condo he co-owned with my wife, planning our destruction while secretly planning hers. Keep digging, I said. I want everything on Reeves. Every complaint, every case, every relationship. And I want contact information for his ex-clients, the ones who filed complaints. Can you get that? Probably. It'll take some creative maneuvering, but yeah. What are you planning? I'm planning to make sure everyone gets exactly what they deserve, I said. After I hung up, I sat in my office as the sun rose over Seattle, painting the clouds in shades of pink and gold, beautiful and false. In 2 days, the truth would come out. In 2 days, the performance would end, and I would be ready. Thursday afternoon brought rain again, the kind that Seattle does best. Not violent, not dramatic, just persistent and gray, turning the world soft at the edges. I stood at my office window watching it fall, phone pressed to my ear, listening to David Morrison walk me through the asset protection strategy he'd finalized. The key is the timing, he was saying, his voice carrying that particular tone lawyers use when discussing legal warfare. If we move assets before she files, it looks like we're hiding money. But if we wait until after she files, we're responding to her aggression, protecting ourselves from someone who's already demonstrated bad faith. And Saturday qualifies as demonstrating bad faith? A woman uninviting her husband from a party he funded while keeping his $60,000 deposit? Yeah, Tom, I'd say that demonstrates bad faith pretty clearly, especially when we can document that she did it without his knowledge and laughed about it. I thought about Rebecca Hartwell's voice on the phone, the discomfort in her tone when she'd relayed Melissa's reaction. She laughed when I confirmed the change had been made. That detail, more than anything else, had crystallized my resolve. Not the affair, not the stolen money, not even the systematic planning, but the laughter, the joy she'd taken in my erasure. What about the photos Marcus found? I asked. The ones of Melissa and Reeves in Portland? Those are gold. An attorney having a sexual relationship with a client during divorce proceedings? That's not just unethical. It's potentially criminal depending on how the relationship influenced his legal advice. The Bar Association will eat him alive. Good. David was quiet for a moment. Tom, I need to ask you something, and I need an honest answer. Always. Are you doing this because it's the right legal strategy? Or are you doing this because you want to hurt them? The question hung between us, weighted with implications about my character, my motivations, my soul. I could have lied. I could have claimed the moral high ground, insisted this was purely about justice and appropriate legal response. But David was my friend before he was my lawyer, and he deserved honesty. Both, I said. Is that terrible? No, he sighed, and I heard the leather of his chair creak as he shifted position. It's human. They've hurt you, and you want to hurt them back. That's a completely normal response to betrayal. But Tom, there's a difference between protecting yourself and destroying someone. Make sure you know which one you're doing. What if they're the same thing? Then you need to ask yourself if you can live with the consequences. After we hung up, I returned to the window, watching the rain and thinking about consequences. What would happen after Saturday? When Caroline discovered her party didn't exist, When Melissa realized I knew about Portland and Reeves and the money, what then? The marriage would end, obviously. That was inevitable now, had been inevitable since Tuesday when Rebecca called. But ending a marriage wasn't the same as destroying one. I could file for divorce quietly, negotiate a settlement, walk away with my dignity and most of my assets intact. Or I could do what I was planning, expose Melissa publicly, ruin Reeves professionally, make an example of what happened when people underestimated Thomas Chen. One path was civilized, the other was war. I thought about Melissa at dinner last night, kissing me goodnight, asking about trips we'd take together. I thought about her sleeping beside me, peaceful and unburdened, dreaming while I lay awake cataloging her betrayals. War it was. My phone buzzed at 3:47 p.m. A text from Melissa. So I did something maybe crazy. I got Mom a birthday present from both of us. Can I show you tonight? I think you'll love it. A present from both of us. More of my money, spent in my name, for a celebration I wouldn't attend. The audacity of it was almost impressive. I typed back, "Can't wait to see it. What time will you be home?" "Around 6. Making lasagna for dinner. Your favorite." Lasagna. My favorite. She was going to cook for me, serve me dinner, smile across the table while knowing she'd erased me from her mother's party, while planning to leave me, while sleeping with another man. The performance was exquisite, really. If I didn't know better, I'd believe it completely. I left the office at 5:30, driving through rain-slicked streets toward the house. Melissa and I shared the house that would soon belong to only one of us. The Christmas lights we'd hung together last weekend glowed warm against the gray evening, creating an illusion of home, of happiness, of a life that no longer existed. Inside, the house smelled of garlic and tomatoes. Italian comfort food that Melissa made maybe 3 times a year, always for special occasions. I found her in the kitchen, hair pulled back, wearing an apron that said "Kiss the Cook," stirring sauce, while something classical played softly from the speaker on the counter. "Hey, baby," she said, turning to kiss me, and I tasted red wine on her lips, saw the slight flush in her cheeks that meant she'd already had a glass or two. Perfect timing. Dinner's almost ready. Smells amazing. I loosened my tie, playing my role. What's the occasion? No occasion. Can't I just want to cook for my husband? She smiled, returning to her sauce. Although, I am excited to show you Mom's present. I think it's perfect. I poured myself a whiskey Macallan 18, the expensive stuff I saved for moments that required numbing, and leaned against the counter, watching her cook. She moved with easy familiarity through our kitchen, knowing where everything lived, every motion practiced and efficient. 7 years of marriage had made her an expert in this space, this life, this performance of domesticity. "Tell me about your day," she said. The question automatic, the kind of thing married people ask each other without thinking. Meetings, conference calls, the usual. I sipped my whiskey, feeling the burn. How was dress shopping with Caroline? "Oh my God, so fun. We went to that boutique in Bellevue, you know the one, and Mom tried on probably 15 dresses. She looked stunning in all of them, but the green one." Melissa turned to me, her eyes bright with genuine enthusiasm. "Tom, she's going to look so beautiful on Saturday. This party is going to be everything she deserves." Everything she deserves. The phrase echoed in my mind, taking on new meaning. Caroline would get exactly what she deserved on Saturday, the truth about her complicity, the consequences of her silence, the revelation that loyalty was a two-way street. "I'm sure it will be," I said. Melissa studied me for a moment, her head tilted. "You seem quiet. Everything okay?" "Just tired. Long week." "I know, baby. But after Saturday, things will calm down. And then we can take that trip we talked about." She set down her spoon and crossed to me, sliding her arms around my waist, pressing her body against mine. "Somewhere with beaches and umbrella drinks and absolutely no family obligations." I held her, feeling the familiar shape of her against me, smelling her shampoo, something floral and expensive that she special ordered from France. This was muscle memory. 7 years of embraces and kisses and intimate moments. My body knew how to hold her, even as my mind rejected everything she represented. "That sounds perfect," I said into her hair. She pulled back, looking up at me with eyes that seemed genuinely affectionate, genuinely invested in this moment, this marriage, this lie. "I love you, Thomas Chen, even when you're being weird and distant." "I love you too," I said, and the words tasted like ash. Dinner was elaborate, the lasagna, yes, but also Caesar salad with fresh Parmesan, garlic bread from the bakery she liked, tiramisu for dessert. She'd set the table with our good china, lit candles, created an atmosphere of celebration. "This feels fancy," I said, settling into my seat. "You're sure there's no occasion?" "Maybe I just wanted to remind you how good we are together." She poured wine a Barolo that probably cost more than most people's monthly grocery budget. "We've been so busy lately. So stressed with work and Mom's party planning. I wanted one night that was just about us. Just about us." I looked across the table at this woman who'd shared my life for 7 years, who knew my coffee order and my favorite books and the way I liked my shirts folded, who'd held my hand at my father's funeral, celebrated my business victories, talked me down from panic attacks at 3 in the morning, who was sleeping with her divorce attorney while planning to take me for millions. How did those two people exist in the same body? How could she be both the woman who remembered I liked extra cheese on my lasagna and the woman who'd laughed about erasing me from her family? "This is nice," I said, "because it was expected." We ate, and she talked about her mother's excitement, about the dress shopping, about old photos they'd found, about memories from Melissa's childhood. She was animated, engaged, present in a way she hadn't been in months. It was like she decided to give me one perfect evening, one last performance before everything changed. Or maybe she felt guilty. Maybe some part of her, buried deep beneath the planning and the lies, felt the weight of what she was doing and wanted to offer this as compensation. One good meal, one loving evening, one moment of genuine connection before she destroyed me. "Okay," she said finally, pushing her plate aside. "Present time. Close your eyes. Melissa, come on. Humor me. Close your eyes." I closed my eyes, heard her leave the table, heard rustling from the living room. When she told me to open them, she was standing there holding a large wrapped box, her smile proud and expectant. "This is from both of us," she said again, setting it on the table in front of me. "I used the joint account, so technically you helped pay for it, but I did all the research and picking out, so..." She laughed. I unwrapped the box carefully, aware that this moment meant something to her, that she wanted me to appreciate whatever thoughtful gift she'd chosen. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a leather-bound photo album. No, not just an album. A custom-made book, the kind that cost thousands of dollars, filled with professionally printed photos. "It's a memory book," Melissa explained, sliding into the chair next to mine. "For the video montage, I had them print out all the photos we're going to use, arranged chronologically, with little captions. This way, Mom can have a physical copy to keep forever." I opened the book, page after page of Caroline's life, documented in careful detail. Baby photos, wedding photos, photos with her children at various ages. Caroline young and beautiful, Caroline middle-aged and elegant, Caroline at parties and holidays and ordinary moments. And near the end, photos of me. At our wedding, at family dinners, at Caroline's house for Christmas, at the beach last summer. In every photo, I was smiling, present, part of the family. "See, this is my favorite," Melissa said, pointing to a photo from 2 years ago. "This is from when you surprised Mom with tickets to see Hamilton. Look at her face. She was so happy she cried." I remembered. I'd bought the tickets on a whim, knowing Caroline loved musical theater, wanting to do something nice for her. She'd hugged me for a full minute, calling me thoughtful and generous and the best son-in-law anyone could ask for. The memory felt distant now, like it belonged to a different person in a different life. "This must have cost a fortune," I said, turning pages. "About $8,000, with the rush order." Melissa smiled, "But it's worth it. Mom is going to absolutely lose her mind when she sees it on Saturday. $8,000 of my money for a gift I'd never see presented. For a celebration I wouldn't attend. $8,000 added to the $60,000 for the party, added to the $240,000 Melissa had already stolen, added to the $1 million she was planning to take in the divorce. I was funding my own destruction, one thoughtful gesture at a time. "It's beautiful," I said, because it was. The book was exquisite, the photos carefully chosen, the presentation flawless. Melissa had put real thought into this, real effort. If I didn't know what I knew, I'd be touched by her thoughtfulness, grateful to have a wife who cared so much about making her mother happy. But I did know, and the book in my hands felt like evidence, like proof of the performance, like one more beautiful lie in a relationship built on them. "I'm glad you like it," Melissa said, leaning her head on my shoulder. "I wanted to do something special for her. She's been through so much, you know? 3 marriages, 3 divorces, all that heartbreak. She deserves to be celebrated, to feel loved and appreciated." "She does," I agreed, thinking about Caroline's warning at dinner 2 nights ago. Melissa holds grudges forever, and she never forgets. Carolyn had tried to tell me something that night, had offered a glimpse behind the curtain. I'd been too naive to understand. We finished dessert, and Melissa insisted on doing the dishes herself, waving me away when I offered to help. "Go relax," she said. "You've been working so hard. Put your feet up, watch something mindless." I retreated to the living room, settling onto the couch with my laptop, while Melissa clattered around in the kitchen, humming along to the music. I opened my secure email and checked for updates from Marcus. There was a new message, timestamped 20 minutes ago. "Found something you need to see. Call me when you can talk privately." I glanced toward the kitchen, where Melissa was still occupied, then dialed. Marcus answered on the first ring. "Are you alone?" "More or less." "What did you find?" "David Reeves filed for a marriage license in Oregon 3 weeks ago." The words didn't register at first. I heard them, processed them individually, but couldn't make them cohere into meaning. "Marriage license," I repeated slowly. "Who's he marrying?" "That's the thing. The application lists his intended spouse as M. Chen. Tom, I think Reeves and Melissa are planning to get married as soon as your divorce is finalized." I felt something cold and sharp lodge in my chest. They can't be that stupid. Oregon requires a waiting period between divorce and remarriage. And the optics alone. "Unless the marriage license is insurance," Marcus interrupted. "Think about it. If they get married quickly after your divorce, it makes it harder for you to go after them legally. Spousal privilege kicks in. Their assets become jointly held. Reeves gets legal protection from some of the ethics complaints we could file. But they'd have to wait until the divorce is final." "Right. Which means Melissa's probably planning to file soon. Maybe even this weekend, after the party." He paused. "Tom, I think Saturday might be more than just a birthday celebration. I think it might be Melissa's exit strategy. She celebrates her mom's 60th, says goodbye to the family, and then Monday morning, she files for divorce and disappears to Portland with Reeves." The timeline clicked into place with horrible clarity. The party was meant to be a farewell, a last gathering before Melissa left her old life behind. Caroline's 60th birthday was just the cover story, the excuse to bring everyone together one final time before the explosion. And I'd been uninvited because my presence would have ruined the narrative. How could Melissa play the victim, the escaping wife, the brave woman leaving a controlling marriage, if I was right there looking confused and blindsided? Better to erase me entirely. Better to celebrate without me, to say goodbye to her family without my inconvenient presence, to set the stage for the story she'd tell afterward. "Tom? You still there?" "I'm here." My voice sounded distant, hollow. "What else?" I spoke to one of Reeves's former clients. She was willing to talk off the record. Papers rustled. She said Reeves convinced her that her husband was controlling and abusive, helped her document evidence of mistreatment that was really just normal marital disagreements. He coached her on what to say to therapists, how to frame things for the court, how to build a case, and the whole time he was sleeping with her, telling her he loved her. What happened? The husband fought back hard, hired good attorneys, exposed some of the false evidence, made Reeves's involvement look questionable. The case settled for much less than expected, and immediately after, Reeves ghosted her, stopped returning calls, moved to a different city, left her holding the bag for his legal fees. And you think he's doing the same thing to Melissa? I think Melissa is a means to an end. She's giving him access to your money and your business. Once he's gotten what he wants, his fee, maybe a chunk of her settlement, he'll disappear. The marriage license is probably just another tool. Another way to protect himself legally while he extracts maximum value. I thought about the photo album on the dining room table, about Melissa's excitement over her mother's gift, about the way she'd looked at me over dinner, genuine and warm and completely convinced of her own narrative. She had no idea she was being used. She thought she'd found love, partnership, freedom. She thought David Reeves was her rescue, her future, her second chance. She was wrong. Send me everything you've got on the marriage license, I said. And Marcus? Accelerate the investigation. If they're planning to file Monday, I need to know everything before Saturday. I'm already on it. Tom, I know I keep asking this, but are you okay? Was I okay? I looked around the living room, the furniture Melissa had chosen, the art she'd hung, the life we'd built together. From the kitchen, I could hear her still humming, happy and unburdened, completely unaware that her carefully constructed plan was about to collapse. Ask me on Sunday, I said again. After I hung up, I sat in the darkness, listening to my wife make domestic sounds in the next room, thinking about marriage licenses and exit strategies and the particular kind of betrayal that came wrapped in lasagna and candlelight. Melissa emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. All done. Want to watch a movie or something? I looked at her, this stranger wearing my wife's face, this actress performing love, and felt nothing but cold clarity. Sure, I said. You pick. She settled beside me on the couch, chose some romantic comedy I'd seen before, curled against my side the way she always did. On screen, attractive people fell in love, and overcame obstacles, and got their happy ending. In the real world, I sat with my arm around a woman who was planning to marry another man, counting down the hours until everything exploded. 48 hours until Saturday. 48 hours until the truth. Friday morning arrived with rare December sunshine, the kind that turns Seattle into a city of glass and light. Everything sharp-edged and crystalline. I woke before dawn, slipping out of bed while Melissa slept, her breathing deep and even, her face peaceful in the half-light. She looked innocent like this, young, like the woman I'd married 7 years ago, full of promise and possibility, someone I'd believed I could build a life with. That woman had never existed, or maybe she had, and I'd simply loved a version of her that she'd outgrown, left behind, replaced with someone harder and more calculating. I didn't know which was worse. I showered in the guest bathroom, dressed in the dark, and was out of the house by 5:47 a.m., leaving nothing but a note on the kitchen counter. Early start, big day, love you. 2 more lies to add to the collection we'd both been building. David Morrison was already at his office when I arrived at 6:30, looking like he'd slept there if he'd slept at all. Coffee cups littered his desk, legal pads covered in his precise handwriting, his computer monitor glowing with what appeared to be several dozen open tabs. Tell me you've got something, I said, settling into the chair across from him. I've got everything. He pushed a thick folder across the desk. Complete asset protection strategy, divorce filing paperwork ready to go, documentation of every questionable transaction Melissa has made in the past 8 months. If she files Monday, we'll be ready to respond within hours. And if I want to file first, we can do it this afternoon. Have her served tomorrow morning, right before the party that doesn't exist. He studied me over his reading glasses. Is that what you want? I thought about it, Melissa, receiving divorce papers on the morning of her mother's birthday, discovering simultaneously that I knew everything and that her celebration had been canceled. Maximum impact, maximum devastation, maximum revenge. It was tempting. No, I said finally. Let it play out. Let her discover the party's been canceled. Let her realize I know. Then we respond. You want her to suffer first. I want her to understand what she's done. There's a difference. David didn't argue, just made a note on his legal pad. Fair enough. I also have some information about David Reeves you'll find interesting. Tell me. The Bar Association has been quietly investigating him for the past 6 months. 3 separate complaints from former clients, all alleging sexual misconduct and financial impropriety. The investigation is ongoing, but my source says they're close to filing formal disciplinary charges. I felt a grim satisfaction settle in my chest. How close? Could be weeks, could be months. But Tom, here's the important part. If we provide evidence that Reeves is currently engaged in an inappropriate relationship with Melissa during active divorce planning, it could accelerate the investigation. Possibly get him disbarred before your divorce even goes to court, which would leave Melissa without an attorney. More than that, it would invalidate any advice he's given her, potentially undo some of the financial planning they've done together. The marriage license they filed in Oregon could be voided if it's proven he obtained it while in an unethical relationship with a client. I thought about the marriage license Marcus had discovered, about Melissa's plan to marry Reeves as soon as our divorce was finalized. The image was almost pathetic. Melissa believing she was entering a loving partnership, while Reeves was simply securing spousal privilege and access to her settlement money. Do it, I said. File whatever complaints you need to file. Provide whatever evidence will help the Bar Association's investigation. This will destroy his career. Good. He's a predator. How many other women has he done this to? How many other marriages has he helped dismantle while sleeping with his clients? David nodded slowly. I'll draft the complaint today. But Tom, you need to understand, this won't just affect Reeves. When this comes out, when the Bar Association starts investigating, Melissa's going to be caught in the crossfire. Her affair will become public record. Her role in the financial planning, the money she's moved, the condo they bought together, all of it will be exposed. She made her choices. She did. I just want to make sure you understand the scope of what's coming. This isn't just a divorce. This is going to be ugly and public, and everyone in your social circle will be talking about it. I thought about our friends, the couples we'd had dinner with, the people we'd vacationed with, the network of relationships we'd built over 7 years. Most of them would take sides. Some would distance themselves from both of us, unwilling to get involved in the mess. A few would reach out with sympathy and judgment in equal measure. I didn't care. Let them talk. Let them judge. The truth mattered more than social standing. I understand, I said. We spent the next 2 hours going through everything, timelines, documentation, strategy for various scenarios. David was thorough, anticipating every possible move Melissa and Reeves might make, preparing responses for each contingency. By the time I left his office, I felt armored, protected, ready for war. My phone rang as I pulled into the parking garage at Chen Holdings. Marcus, please tell me this is the last piece, I said. It's a big piece. He sounded tired, like he'd been up all night. I've been going through Melissa's emails. How did you raid? Don't ask. Just know that what I'm about to tell you is admissible in court if we need it. Papers rustled. Tom, Melissa's been planning this for longer than 8 months. I found emails going back almost 2 years, discussing divorce strategy, financial planning, exit scenarios. 2 years. The number landed like a punch I should have seen coming. 2 years, I repeated slowly. She's been planning to leave me for 2 years? Not continuously. It looks like she first started researching divorce about 18 months ago, looking at attorneys, reading articles about high net worth divorces, calculating potential settlements. Then there's a gap of several months where she doesn't mention it. Then it picks up again last year, more seriously this time. That's when she first contacted David Reeves. What triggered it? That's the question, isn't it? Marcus paused. I've been trying to figure that out, looking at calendar entries, trying to correlate when her research intensified with what was happening in your marriage. And Tom, the first serious spike in divorce research happened right after your company went public. I remembered that day. The IPO had been the culmination of years of work, transforming Chen Holdings from a private investment firm into a publicly traded company worth hundreds of millions. Melissa had been there on the trading floor, smiling for photos, celebrating with champagne, telling me how proud she was. That night, she'd gone home and started researching how to take half of it. She saw the IPO and decided I was worth more to her divorced than married, I said flatly. That's my read. Yes. Before the IPO, she was sitting on maybe a few million in potential settlement. After, she was looking at tens of millions, possibly more. The math changed, and so did her calculus about the marriage. I thought about that night. Our celebration, the way Melissa had clung to me, told me she loved me, said she was excited about our future. I'd believed her completely, had no reason not to. Why would I suspect that my success had just turned me into a target? What else? I asked, because I could hear in Marcus's voice that there was more. The emails between Melissa and Reeves are extensive. Hundreds of messages over the past 8 months. They discuss everything what you own, how it's structured, vulnerabilities in your corporate setup, ways to maximize her settlement. It's not just an affair, Tom. It's a detailed conspiracy to strip you of assets. Give me an example. Okay, here's one from 6 months ago. Melissa writes, Thomas has been talking about buying a new property in Montana. Some kind of ranch or resort development. Should I encourage this? Would it be easier to claim in a divorce if it's purchased during the marriage? And Reeves responds, absolutely encourage it. Get him to put it in joint names if possible. Even if he doesn't, a property purchased during marriage is marital property, potentially subject to division. I felt sick. The Montana property, I'd mentioned it casually over dinner. A dream project I'd been considering. Melissa had been enthusiastic, supportive, even helping me research locations. I'd thought she was interested in our future together. She'd been calculating how to steal it. There's more, Marcus continued. Reeves gives her specific instructions on what to say to her therapist to build a case for emotional abuse, how to document arguments to make you look controlling, what financial transactions to make to create the appearance of having to hide money. It's a blueprint for fraud, Tom, and Melissa follows every instruction perfectly. She's been seeing a therapist? For the past 6 months, Dr. Sarah Chen, no relation to you, different spelling, specializes in helping women leave difficult marriages. Every session is documented, and according to the emails, Melissa has been very careful about what she tells the therapist, framing everything to support her narrative. I thought about the arguments Melissa and I had over the past months, disagreements about money, time, priorities. I'd thought they were normal marital friction, the kind of conflicts every couple navigates. But now I could see them differently, could understand that Melissa had been creating them, manufacturing evidence, building her case, one carefully orchestrated fight at a time. Send me everything, I said. Every email, every document, every piece of evidence. I want it all, already done. Check your secure email. He paused. Tom, I'm sorry. I know this is a lot to process. Don't be sorry. You're doing exactly what I hired you to do. I pulled into my parking space, killed the engine. Is there anything else I should know before tomorrow? Just one thing. I tracked down another one of Reeves's ex-clients, woman named Patricia Holbrook. She was willing to talk, and her story is, it's almost identical to what's happening with Melissa. Reeves seduced her during her divorce, convinced her to make financial moves that benefited him, promised marriage, then disappeared once he got his fee. She's willing to testify to that pattern if we need her. Get her statement in writing, signed and notarized. Already did. I'll email you a copy. After we hung up, I sat in my car for a long time, staring at the concrete wall of the parking garage, trying to process 2 years of deception. 2 years of Melissa looking at me and seeing not a husband, but a mark. 2 years of calculated moves and manufactured conflicts and careful documentation. How had I missed it? What signs had I ignored? Or had she simply been that good at performing, that skilled at deception? My phone buzzed. A text from Melissa. Morning, baby. Can you believe it's finally here? Tomorrow is Mom's big day. I'm so excited I can barely function. What time will you be home tonight? Want to make sure we're coordinated for tomorrow. I stared at the message, at the exclamation points and emoji, at the false enthusiasm for a party that didn't exist. She was still performing, still playing her role, completely unaware that I held all the cards now. I typed back, home by 7. We should probably go over the schedule for tomorrow to make sure we're on the same page. Perfect. See you then. Love you. Love you. The words were meaningless now, just sounds she made, syllables arranged in a familiar pattern to maintain the illusion. I forwarded her text to David Morrison with a single line. More evidence of ongoing deception and fraud. The day crawled by in a haze of meetings I barely attended, phone calls I navigated on autopilot, decisions I made with only a fraction of my attention. The rest of my mind was occupied with tomorrow, with the moment when everything would come crashing down. I'd considered warning Caroline, calling her to explain what was going to happen, but that felt like mercy she hadn't earned. She'd known about my uninvitation, or at least suspected, and had said nothing. She'd let me pay for her party while knowing I'd been erased from it. She could discover the truth the same way Melissa would, by showing up to nothing. At 3:15 p.m., my assistant Sarah knocked on my office door. "Mr. Chen, there's a woman here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's urgent. Her name is Patricia Holbrook." Patricia Holbrook, Reeves's former client, the one Marcus had interviewed. What was she doing here? Send her in. The woman who entered my office was in her mid-50s, expensively dressed, carrying herself with the careful dignity of someone who'd survived something terrible and refused to let it break her. She had kind eyes and a sad smile, and she looked at me with something like pity. "Mr. Chen," she said, extending her hand. "Thank you for seeing me. I know this is irregular. Please, sit." I gestured to the chair across from my desk. "What can I do for you?" She settled into the chair, folded her hands in her lap. "Your investigator, Mr. Wu, interviewed me about David Reeves, about my experience with him during my divorce. I'm aware, and I appreciate your willingness to help. That's actually why I'm here. After our conversation, I did some research on you, on your situation with your wife." She met my eyes directly. "Mr. Chen, I know what you're going through. I know what it's like to discover that someone you trusted has been systematically betraying you. And I wanted to tell you something that I wish someone had told me." "What's that?" "Revenge feels good in the moment, but it doesn't heal the wound. It doesn't give you back what you've lost." She leaned forward slightly. "I destroyed my ex-husband in our divorce. I took him for everything I could, and I felt justified doing it because of what he'd done to me. But afterward, when the dust settled and I was alone in my new apartment with my settlement money, I realized I'd lost myself in the process. I'd become someone I didn't recognize, someone capable of real cruelty. I thought about the party tomorrow, about the humiliation I was planning to inflict on Melissa and Caroline. What are you suggesting I do instead?" "I'm suggesting you think carefully about what you want the rest of your life to look like. Do you want to be the person who destroyed his wife publicly? Or do you want to be the person who handled a terrible situation with dignity? Your ex-husband, did he deserve what you did to him?" "Probably. He'd been cheating on me for years, stealing from our joint accounts, planning to leave me with nothing." She smiled sadly. "But the question isn't whether he deserved it. The question is whether I wanted to be the kind of person who delivers that kind of justice." We sat in silence for a moment, her words hanging between us. "I appreciate your concern," I said finally. "But my situation is different. Melissa hasn't just betrayed me personally. She's conspired with her attorney to commit fraud, to steal money, to build a case on lies. If I don't respond forcefully, she'll take me apart in court." "Then respond forcefully in court. File for divorce. Protect your assets. Expose the affair with Reeves to the Bar Association." "But Mr. Scrane..." "Chen." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Don't do whatever you're planning to do tomorrow. Don't give her ammunition to use against you. Don't become the villain in her story." "I'm already the villain in her story. She's been painting me that way for 2 years." "Then prove her wrong. Be better than the narrative she's created." Patricia stood, smoothed her skirt. "I know you won't take my advice. I wouldn't have taken it either, in your position. But I wanted to say it anyway, because I wish someone had said it to me." After she left, I sat in my office as the afternoon faded into evening, thinking about her words. Be better than the narrative. Handle it with dignity. Don't become the villain. It was good advice, probably, the kind of wisdom that came from experience and regret, but it was also advice I couldn't take, Because this wasn't just about me and Melissa anymore. It was about everyone who'd underestimated me, who'd thought I was too trusting or too naive or too in love to see what was happening. It was about David Reeves and his pattern of predatory behavior. It was about Caroline and her complicit silence. They'd all made calculations about who I was and what I'd do. Tomorrow, they'd discover how wrong they'd been. I arrived home at 7:04 p.m. to find Melissa in full celebration mode. She'd cooked again Thai, this time my other favorite, and the house smelled of lemongrass and coconut. Music played from the speakers, something upbeat and happy, and she danced around the kitchen, her hair up in a messy bun, wearing jeans and one of my old college sweatshirts. She looked young and happy and completely at peace, like someone with nothing to hide. There you are. She beamed at me, crossing the kitchen to kiss me. I was starting to think you'd gotten lost. Dinner's almost ready, and I wanted to go over the schedule for tomorrow. I set down my briefcase, loosened my tie. Sounds good. Let me just change. Upstairs, in our bedroom, my bedroom, I stood in front of my closet, trying to decide what to wear tomorrow. What did you wear to watch your life explode? What was appropriate for the end of everything? I chose a navy suit, a white shirt, a tie the color of blood. Appropriate, I thought. Professional armor for the war that was coming. When I came back downstairs, Melissa had set the table again, another elaborate spread for a Friday night. She'd printed out a schedule for tomorrow, complete with times and locations and color-coded responsibilities. Okay, so here's the plan, she said, sliding the paper across the table to me. Guests start arriving at the Meridian at 2 p.m. Cocktail hour is 2 to 3. Then everyone moves to the ballroom for the party at 3. Dinner is at 5, and the video montage plays at 6:30, right before cake. Mom thinks she's just having a small family dinner, so when she walks into that ballroom and sees everyone, Melissa's eyes were bright with excitement. She's going to absolutely die. I studied the schedule. This careful planning for an event that would never happen. What time should I arrive? What? Well, actually, Melissa looked down, suddenly awkward. I was thinking maybe you could come a little later, like around 4. Mom wants just family for the initial surprise, and I know she'll be emotional, and it might be easier if I'm not there. I finished. She looked up, startled. No, baby, that's not what I meant. Just that it might be overwhelming with too many people and... Melissa, I kept my voice level, curious to see how far she'd take the lie. You uninvited me to the party, didn't you? The color drained from her face. For a moment, just a moment, I saw genuine panic in her eyes, the fear of someone whose carefully constructed plan had just collapsed. Then she laughed, the sound forced and brittle. What? No? Who told you that? Rebecca, from the event planning company. She called to confirm I wasn't attending. Oh my God, Melissa pressed her hand to her mouth. Tom, I'm so sorry. That was a miscommunication. I was adjusting the seating chart and accidentally removed your name. And Rebecca must have thought, I can't believe she didn't check with me before calling you. I'm mortified. The lie was impressive, delivered with just the right mix of embarrassment and indignation. If I didn't know better, I might have believed her. So I'm still invited? I asked. Of course you're still invited. Baby, this is my mom's 60th birthday. How could I possibly celebrate without you there? She reached across the table, took my hand. I'm so sorry, you thought. God, you must have felt terrible. Why didn't you say something earlier? I wanted to see if you'd tell me yourself. Something flashed in her eyes. Anger, maybe, or fear. But she covered it quickly with a smile. Well, now you know it was just a stupid mistake. I'll call Rebecca first thing tomorrow and make sure your name is back on everything, okay? Okay, I said, playing along, curious to see what she'd do next. She squeezed my hand, relief evident on her face. Crisis averted. Now, let's eat before the food gets cold. We ate dinner, and she talked about tomorrow, about her mother's dress, about the guests who were flying in, about how perfect everything was going to be. She was convincing. I'd give her that. Every word, every gesture, every expression calibrated to sell the performance. But I'd seen her emails to Reeves. I'd read Marcus's reports. I knew about the Portland condo and the marriage license and the 2 years of planning. She was lying, and we both knew it, even if only one of us would admit it. After dinner, after dishes, after another hour of her enthusiastic party planning, Melissa yawned and stretched. I should get to bed early. Big day tomorrow. You coming up? In a bit. I have some work to finish. She kissed me goodnight, her lips warm and soft, tasting faintly of Thai basil. Don't stay up too late. I want you well rested and handsome tomorrow. I won't, I promised. After she went upstairs, I sat in the darkness of our living room, listening to her move around above me, water running, drawers opening and closing, the soft sounds of her nighttime routine. Tomorrow, all of this would end. Tomorrow, the performance would stop. Tomorrow, Melissa would discover what happened when you underestimated someone's capacity for response. I pulled out my phone and texted David Morrison, "Everything is in place. Let it happen." His response came immediately. "Are you sure? Last chance to reconsider." I thought about Patricia Holbrook's advice. I thought about dignity and mercy and being better than the narrative. Then I thought about 2 years of lies, $240,000 stolen, a marriage license filed with another man while she slept in my bed. "I'm sure," I typed. "Let it burn." Saturday, December 16th, Caroline Whitmore's 60th birthday. The day arrived gray and cold, winter pressing against the windows with the promise of snow that Seattle almost never delivered. I woke at dawn. Alone, Melissa had already left, a note on her pillow. "Getting ready at Mom's. See you at the party. Love you." I dressed slowly, methodically. Navy suit, white shirt, blood-red tie, the armor I'd chosen yesterday. My phone showed 17 missed calls from Rebecca Hartwell, the event planner. I didn't listen to the voicemails. I knew what they said. At 1:47 p.m., I received a text from Caroline. "Thomas, darling, I cannot wait for tonight. Melissa won't tell me what the surprise is, but I know it's going to be spectacular. Thank you for everything you've done. You're truly the best." I didn't reply. At 2:03 p.m., the first guests would be arriving at the Meridian Hotel. Walking into an empty lobby, finding no ballroom prepared, no decorations, no celebration. Just confused hotel staff explaining that the event had been canceled days ago. I imagined their faces: Caroline's friends, Melissa's siblings, the people who'd flown in from across the country expecting a party. The confusion would turn to concern. Concern would turn to calls and texts, and eventually, someone would reach Caroline. My phone rang at 2:17 p.m. Caroline. I let it ring through to voicemail. Another call, 30 seconds later. Melissa, this time. I silenced my phone and placed it face down on my desk. At 2:34 p.m., my doorbell rang. I'd been expecting this, though not quite this soon. Through the window, I saw Melissa's car in the driveway, parked at a violent angle, like she'd arrived in a panic. I opened the door. Melissa stood on the porch in the dress she'd bought for the party. Black, elegant, her hair and makeup perfect. But her face was a mask of fury and tears, mascara already streaking her cheeks. "What did you do?" Her voice was low, dangerous. "Thomas, what the fuck did you do?" "I canceled a party I wasn't invited to," I said calmly. "I thought that was clear." "You knew? You knew and you let me. You let Mom." She couldn't finish, rage choking her words. "I knew everything, Melissa. I've known since Tuesday." She stared at me, and I watched her calculate, trying to figure out exactly how much I knew, how much damage had been done. Behind her, Caroline's Mercedes pulled up, and Caroline herself emerged, still in casual clothes, her face pale with shock. "Thomas," Caroline's voice shook. "Please tell me this is some kind of mistake. Please tell me the party is just delayed, or moved, or..." "It's canceled," I said. Completely. The venue, the catering, the hotel rooms, all of it. I called it off on Tuesday, about an hour after I learned that Melissa had uninvited me while keeping my $60,000 deposit. Caroline's hand went to her throat. But I didn't know about that. Melissa didn't tell me you were. She told you. I kept my voice level, matter of fact. You and Melissa spoke for 40 minutes on Wednesday, the day after she called Rebecca. You knew Caroline. You just didn't care enough to call me. Melissa stepped forward, her hands clenched into fists. You bastard. You vindictive, petty bastard. Do you have any idea what you've done? There are 60 people at that hotel right now. People who traveled across the country. And you. I did exactly what you would have done, I interrupted. I protected my interests. I removed myself from a situation where I wasn't wanted. You should appreciate that, Melissa. You've been planning to do the same thing for 2 years. The color drained from her face. What are you talking about? Portland. The condo you bought with David Reeves. The $240,000 you've stolen from our joint accounts. The marriage license you filed in Oregon 3 weeks ago. I watched her face as each detail landed. The emails where you and your attorney/lover discuss how to maximize your settlement. The therapy sessions where you've been manufacturing evidence of abuse. Should I continue? Melissa's mouth opened and closed. No sound coming out. Caroline was staring at her daughter, understanding, dawning on her face. Melissa, Caroline whispered, tell me he's lying. But Melissa couldn't. The performance had finally ended. All that remained was the truth, naked and ugly in the December cold. I want a divorce, I said quietly. My attorney has already prepared the paperwork. You'll be served on Monday. And Melissa? Everything I just mentioned, the affair, the stolen money, the conspiracy with Reeves, it's all documented. Every email, every transaction, every lie. When this goes to court, the whole story comes out. You can't, Melissa breathed. That's privileged communication between me and my attorney. Your attorney who's been sleeping with you during active divorce planning. That privilege disappeared the moment Reeves decided to put his name on your condo deed. I smiled, cold and precise. He's going to be disbarred, Melissa. The Bar Association already has complaints filed. My evidence just accelerates the timeline. Melissa lunged forward, and for a moment I thought she might actually hit me. But Caroline caught her arm, held her back. How could you do this? Melissa's voice was raw, broken. I loved you. I built a life with you. No, I said. You built a case against me. You built an exit strategy. You built a new life with another man while pretending to be my wife. What you didn't build was love. That requires honesty. It requires loyalty. It requires giving a damn about someone other than yourself. I stepped back into my house now, legally and practically, and began to close the door. Thomas, wait. Caroline's voice stopped me. Please, can we talk about this? Can we find some way to... There's nothing to talk about, Caroline. Your daughter made her choices. I'm making mine. The only difference is that mine are based on truth. I closed the door on both of them, on their tears and their protests and their shock. Through the window, I watched Melissa collapse against her mother, watched Caroline try to hold her daughter together while her own celebration lay in ruins. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no guilt, no triumph, no regret. Just the cold, clear certainty that I'd done exactly what needed to be done. My phone buzzed. A text from David Morrison. It's done. Reeves has been notified of the bar investigation. Divorce papers ready for Monday. Are you okay? I looked around my empty house, at the life I'd built with a woman who'd never really been here, at the future that had dissolved like smoke. Ask me tomorrow, I typed back. Then I poured myself a whiskey, sat in the gathering darkness, and waited for whatever came next. The house phone rang at 4:47 p.m. Then my cell, then the doorbell, insistent and angry. I ignored all of it. Through the window, I watched cars arrive and depart. Melissa's siblings, probably. Caroline's friends. People coming to offer support or demand explanations, or simply witness the wreckage. I sat in the darkness, and let them ring. At 6:15 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "You need to see this." He'd forwarded a screenshot from a private Facebook group, one of those Seattle society pages where wealthy people gossiped and pretended they weren't gossiping. The post was from Patricia Henderson, one of Caroline's friends who'd been invited to the party. "Can anyone explain what happened at the Meridian today?" We flew in from San Francisco for Caroline Whitmore's 60th birthday party, only to find out it was canceled. No notice, no explanation, just chaos. Caroline was in tears. Her daughter Melissa was hysterical. "Does anyone know what's going on?" The comments were already multiplying. Speculation, rumors, fragments of truth mixing with fiction. Someone had heard it was a family emergency. Someone else claimed financial problems. A third person mentioned trouble in Melissa's marriage. The truth was leaking out, piece by piece. Another text from Marcus. "Reeves just called me. He wants to talk to you." "No," I typed back. "He says he can explain everything. Says Melissa manipulated him." I almost laughed. Of course, that would be his play: blame the client, claim he was seduced and deceived, position himself as another victim. It was probably the same story he'd told the other women when their usefulness expired. "Still no," I wrote. "Let him explain it to the Bar Association." At 7:03 p.m., Caroline texted, "Thomas, please. Melissa is devastated. Can we please talk?" Just the three of us. Quietly. Without lawyers. "I know you're hurt, but surely we can find a way through this that doesn't destroy everyone." I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me, the part that had loved Melissa once, that had called Caroline family, wanted to respond. Wanted to believe that conversation could fix anything. But I'd seen the emails. I knew about the 2 years of planning. I understood exactly how calculated Melissa's devastation was, how strategic Caroline's plea for mercy. "No," I typed simply. At 8:47 p.m., a new text arrived from an unknown number. "This is David Reeves. I know you're angry, but you're making a mistake. Melissa and I can both testify about your controlling behavior, your financial manipulation. You think you've won, but you've just given us ammunition. Call off the bar investigation, and maybe we can settle this quietly." I read it twice, then forwarded it to David Morrison with a note. "Add this to the evidence file." He just threatened me in writing. David's response was immediate. "Beautiful. He's panicking. This makes our case even stronger." At 9:12 p.m., all the texts stopped. All the calls ceased. The house fell silent. I sat in that silence, drinking whiskey, watching the city lights flicker through the rain-streaked windows. Tomorrow, I would meet with David and plan the next phase. Tomorrow, the divorce would begin in earnest. Tomorrow, I would start building a life that didn't include Melissa's lies. But tonight, I simply sat with the ruins of what I'd destroyed and waited to feel something other than cold satisfaction. It never came. 3 months later, I stood on the deck of my new apartment, a penthouse in Belltown with floor-to-ceiling windows that framed Elliott Bay like a living painting. The sun was rising over the Cascades, turning the water gold, and I was drinking coffee alone. Alone had become familiar, comfortable even. The divorce was proceeding exactly as David had predicted. Melissa's case had collapsed the moment we'd presented evidence of the affair, the stolen money, the conspiracy with Reeves. Her attorney, her new attorney, after Reeves had been disbarred in February, had quietly suggested settlement. She would get nothing beyond what she'd brought into the marriage. No alimony, no portion of Chen Holdings, no claim to the properties or investments acquired during our 7 years together. The $240,000 she'd stolen would be repaid over time with interest. David Reeves was facing criminal charges for fraud and ethics violations. 3 more of his former clients had come forward with similar stories. The marriage license he'd filed with Melissa had been voided. The Portland condo was in foreclosure. Melissa had moved back in with Caroline, who'd stopped speaking to me entirely. I'd heard through mutual friends that Caroline's friends had largely abandoned her too, embarrassed by the scandal, uncomfortable with the questions. I should have felt triumphant. I'd won completely, legally, financially, socially. Melissa had been exposed as a liar, and a thief. Reeves had been destroyed professionally. Caroline had lost her celebration and her dignity. But sitting on my deck at sunrise, drinking coffee in expensive silence, I felt only the peculiar emptiness of victory without joy. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Patricia Holbrook wants to know if you'd meet her for coffee. Says she has something she wants to tell you. I'd avoided Patricia since that day she'd visited my office, the day she'd warned me about revenge and dignity and becoming the villain in someone else's story. I hadn't wanted to hear her wisdom then, and I wasn't sure I wanted to hear it now. But I texted back, when and where. We met at a cafe near Pike Place Market, the kind of place that served overpriced lattes to tourists and locals who'd forgotten what coffee used to cost. Patricia was already there, sitting by the window, watching the ferries cross the Sound. "Thank you for coming," she said as I sat down. "You said you had something to tell me." She smiled, that same sad smile I remembered. "I wanted to tell you I was wrong." I blinked, surprised. About what? About revenge. About dignity. About not becoming the villain. She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. "I told you not to do what you were planning. But Mr. Chen Thomas, you did exactly what you needed to do. And I'm sorry I tried to talk you out of it. What changed your mind?" "In friend, I've been following your case, reading the court documents, the evidence you presented, and I realized something. What you did wasn't revenge. It was self-defense. Melissa wasn't just leaving you, she was destroying you, systematically, with Reeves's help. If you hadn't exposed them, she would have taken everything and left you looking like an abuser." I thought about the emails, the manufactured therapy sessions, the careful documentation of controlling behavior that was just me living my normal life. "You saved yourself," Patricia continued, "and you exposed a predator. Because of your case, 3 other women found the courage to come forward about Reeves. He'll never hurt anyone again. That's not revenge, Thomas. That's justice." We sat in silence for a moment, watching the market come alive with Saturday morning crowds. "Do you regret it?" she asked finally. "The party? The exposure? All of it?" I thought about Melissa's face on that December afternoon. About Caroline's shock. About the cascade of consequences that had followed. I thought about the empty penthouse I'd returned to. About the whispers that still followed me at social events. About the price of being right. "No," I said honestly. "I regret the marriage. I regret not seeing what Melissa was sooner. But what I did that Saturday? No. She made her choices. I made mine." Patricia nodded, understanding. "What happens now?" "Now I rebuild. Different this time. Wiser." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You'll be okay, Thomas. Better than okay. You'll be free." That evening, I returned to my penthouse as the sun set over the Olympics, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. I poured myself a whiskey still, Macallan 18. Some habits didn't need changing and stood at the window watching the city transform from day to night. My phone buzzed one last time. An email from David Morrison. "Divorce finalized. You're officially a free man. Drinks on me Monday?" I looked around my empty apartment, at the life I was building alone, at the future spreading out before me like the dark water below. Free. The word tasted strange, unfamiliar, but not unwelcome. I'd learned something in the past 3 months, something Patricia had helped me understand. The truth doesn't always set you free, but lies will always imprison you. Melissa had built her life on lies, and they'd collapsed around her. I'd built my response on truth, and while it had cost me, it had also saved me. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is refuse to be kind to people who would destroy you. Sometimes justice looks like revenge, but feels like survival. Sometimes the person you underestimate is the one holding all the cards. I raised my glass to the city, to the sunset, to the version of myself who'd answered Rebecca's phone call and chosen to respond rather than accept. "To freedom," I said to the empty room. Outside, snow began to fall. Seattle's rare gift, transforming everything it touched into something new and clean. Inside, I stood in the gathering darkness and finally felt something other than cold satisfaction. I felt peace,